Good morning, students. Welcome back to English Language. I am Mrs. LaDawn Barr, and I am being assisted today by Mr. Paul Taylor. This week, we are still continuing with the topic continuous writing, which is a focus on paper 1 for the BGCSE. Today through Friday, I am going to take you down the guided essay path, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So we will continue. Our objectives for today are as follows. You will be able to recall the purpose, format, and content of a continuous writing essay. Number 2, you will be able to develop an outline for your essay. We will begin that today. And number 3, you will be able to compose various parts of your essay in sequential order, meaning the introduction, the body paragraphs, and the conclusion. Number 4, you will be able to evaluate your essay based on SOCA. Remember what SOCA is? It is an acronym for the criteria for the continuous writing essay. It refers to style, organization, content, and accuracy. So I am going to show you, I'm going to put this in different terms for you so you can see where we're going. Okay. The slide I have up here is known as Bloom's taxonomy, okay? And what Bloom's taxonomy does is it shows you the various levels of learning. Now, why am I showing this to you? I am showing this to you because this is what not only myself, but all of your teachers in language arts and every other discipline use to measure your learning, okay? We begin at the bottom. If you can see this here, where my cursor, you can see my cursor, Mr. Taylor?
Yes, ma'am. It is visible. Follow the black arrow, guys, and you can type in the Q&A. We don't have the regular chat feature, so you can send in the individual Q&A any of responses to Ms. Barr's questions or prompts so that we ask of you. But the cursor is visible, Ms. Barr.
Thank you. Okay, why am I showing you Bloom's taxonomy? This little pyramid that we have here, because this is the learning pyramid that the objectives that we write are based on. We begin at the very bottom here at the first level, which is called remembering. And that is meaning that you are able to recognize and recall facts, meaning by now, based on the first 2 weeks of continuous writing, you should be able to remember the requirements of paper 1, how long the paper is, for example, how many words you have to write. At this point, you should be able to recall the main types of writing. This is where we begin. The information that you can recall and remember. After remembering stage, we go a little higher up to level 2. Now that we gave you the content, which we have done, we have to make sure that you understand the content. Notice we're going up that level from low to high. Understand the content, meaning that now that you are able to recall all of those items, can you tell me what each one of them do? Okay. For example, what does a descriptive writing entails? How do you do that? Okay. What does an expository writing entails? How do you do that? What techniques do you use? We were at the understanding level when Mr. Taylor was showing you examples, giving you verbal examples of each of these essay types and telling you how to execute them. Again, we're going up the pyramid. So you are able to recall, you should be able to recall everything about the continuous writing paper. You should be able now to understand, meaning that you should explain to me components of the paper and how to do that. Today, we're going to up a level and we're going to apply. Because we're in the virtual school situation, we haven't been requiring much of this from you. But apply means that now we need to see if you know how to do what we've been teaching you, okay? And we are going to apply everything that you learned today. That's where we are. We're only on the 3rd level. After that, we can go to analyze, okay? You're breaking down, you're looking at each component of your essay, seeing how you can improve. We're going to evaluate, which may be done by your teachers, giving you a grade, showing you how feedback can come together. So this is very important for you to know, not only for this class, but every class. This is how learning takes place. If we just stay here to remember, we're not doing much except recalling information. But as we go up the chart, you are now showing us how you're taking your learning to another level. And today we are on the 3rd level where you will be applying the skills that you learned. Any questions about Bloom's taxonomy before I move on? Or Mr. Taylor, do you have anything to add?
No, Mom, that's fine. Everything is straightforward. So students, you're expected to respond. So let's make that happen today. You can continue, Mr. Barr.
Okay, so I showed you Bloom's taxonomy to make it all relevant, to show you how we are leveling up each and every day. So since we're on the application stage, you will be required today to write an essay. The poll wasn't available yesterday. I was going to let you choose the essay, but since it wasn't available yesterday, I see it's available today. I already chose a topic for you all. So maybe next time I'll let you choose via the poll. So right now, I want you to put your phone aside or to put your whatever device that you're using aside, and I need you to get a notebook and a pen. Please go and do that now, students. I want you to put your device aside, and quickly, I'm going to give you a minute or two. You can get your language arts notebook, you can get folder sheet, and I need you to get something to write with. Please do that now. Today, we are on application. You are going to be applying the skills that you learned. So I need you very quickly. We're going to give you 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes. Get something, get a notebook and something to write with. You are going to be on a guided path for the essay, and you are going to write as you follow along with me, the basic parts of the essay. Once you have something to write with and to write on, I want you just to send a yes to Mr. Taylor in the chat to let us know that you are ready.
Okay, I have affirmatives coming from the chat.
Very good. Okay, so we're ready. The rest of you, we're moving on. I'm very excited to see what you will come up with today. So the first thing we will get to is our topic. And here's the prompt. Like I told you before the poll, before I realized the poll was going to be here, I was going to let you choose, but I chose one for you. I will read the prompt for you. English, mathematics, and science have always been core subjects in the educational system. What are 3 other subjects that you think should be mandatory for all students? Elaborate fully. Okay. Now that I've read it, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to read the prompt silently to yourself. Good. So now I'm going to ask you a question. Number 1, the first one. The second one is going to be a poll. What are the keywords in the prompt? The prompt begins here and it ends here. What are the keywords in this prompt, grade 12? Please send some keywords in the chat.
We have elaborate fully.
Very good.
We also have mandatory. Elaborate fully and mandatory so far. What are you elaborating fully on? You have the word other, but I think there should be another word underlined with that. Remember, keywords are not just the words by itself, but sometimes it may be a phrase from it or a term. Okay, so we have other subjects. Someone says
Very
3
good.
other subjects. We have, from one person, we have mandatory core subjects, elaborate fully. Others,
Okay.
3 other subjects, and we have mandatory as well.
Very good. Excellent answers. And everybody, the elaborate fully jumped out. Now, Mr. Taylor, I'm not sure. I don't think they've ever used elaborate fully on the continuous writing exam, but I said to put it there to challenge students a little bit. So when it says elaborate fully, what does that word elaborate means? You can send your answers in the chat.
Some synonyms to elaborate. When someone asks you to elaborate, what do they want you to do? To go into details. Okay, thank you, Lillian. Expound, go into details, explain in depth, to break it down. Okay, explain in detail.
Such excellent answers, grade 12. I am so proud of you and thank you for your participation. All of you hit the nail on the head. Now, what are we to elaborate fully on? It's not English, math, and science, right? It's other subjects that we think should be mandatory for all students. So I'm going to send a poll here and I want you to tell me, okay. I want you to tell me what essay type this is. There we go. Please answer the poll.
So guys, click at the bottom of your screen. You should see a thing that says poll. When you open it, you should be able to launch a response.
Is it visible for you as well, Mr. Taylor?
It is. We have it's a tight race right now. We have 40% expository, 20% descriptive, 40% persuasive. Persuasive and expository, it's now a tie. We need a tiebreaker. And they're off. We have expository that's in the lead. Expository followed closely by persuasive. Expository is edging out the lead more. Expository, persuasive is coming behind. Expository.
Okay.
Yep, expository, 60%, 30% persuasive, 10% descriptive. At least we're certain it's not a narrative.
It's definitely not a narrative. I'm so happy nobody
Hold on a few more
selected
seconds before we close it out. 55% of the people have voted. And I am going to end the polling now.
Okay, fine.
And we have the winner with 62% expository. Second,
Very good.
29% persuasive, 10% descriptive. Good job, guys.
Okay, those who said it is an expository essay, give yourself a pat on the back. Very good. Now, why isn't it a persuasive? Did the prompt ask you to choose a particular side? I don't think it did. Remember, persuasive, you are going to convince. Do you agree or you disagree? Okay. I remember a description wants details. So they want you to describe anything here. I think the major purpose of this prompt is for you to explain why these other subjects that you came up with are beneficial to the educational system. Thank you so much for participating in the poll, students. It is an expository writing prompt. Okay, so moving along. Do you think this is a topic that you can get enough information or content about to write on? If you think that is true, please send a yes in the chat. Is this a topic that you think that you can have or find enough content to write about? If you think so, please send a yes in the chat.
We have affirmatives coming from the chat.
Okay, very good. And why is that? And that's why I
We have
chose the
someone that is
topic.
not, if someone that is not too sure, someone mentioned it says not really.
Not really, but you are students. Okay, that's why
I
I
think as
chose
we
this one.
brainstorm, they may get a bit more comfortable with it. Remember, students, it's not if you're able to write an entire essay when you read it, but is it a subject that you kind of have information on? And as you plan, you should come up with more stuff. This is why it's important to analyze it and understand what type of prompt you have. So, your students, like Ms. Barr says, so have confidence that you know enough. Just analyze the prompt carefully and choose accordingly.
Very good. So now it's time for the planning stage. Okay, now we're looking for subjects except English, math, and science. Before I go on to the planning, well, I'll go on to the planning. Here is our brainstorming chart. This is how it's going to look. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes just to put this first circle in the middle. And please make it big enough so that you may put today's topic in there. Okay, and then these are where we're going to have our main ideas, and around here we're going to have something else. I'm not saying it because I'm going to ask you what that last set of bubbles are. So I want you to take this down. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to take this down in your notebooks, please. Please take down this brainstorming chart. I want you to write the topic in the middle of your notebook. And if you're heading up, please put today's date. Please put virtual school, language arts, and put the topic continuous writing. After you would have done that, I need you to take down this brainstorming chart. Everyone right now should be writing. I want you to put a circle in the middle of your book, big enough whereby you can write the topic. After you would have done that, I need you to do these outer circles whereby you have main idea number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. For those just joining us, you're taking down this brainstorming chart in your notebooks or on a piece of folder sheet. Today's session, today and this week's sessions are working sessions. Once you would have done that, you can send a thumbs up or a done in the chat.
Okay, we have someone that is completed from the chat. We have a done from the chat.
Okay, I'll give the others some more time. Please take down the brainstorming chart in your notebooks.
Remember, guys, you're also doing this to keep us a record for you so that you'll be prepared on your own individually. Even though you may have it electronically to access, when you write it down physically, it gives you the practice that you need in the exam. And this is the first crucial step. So I want to encourage everyone, you know, even if you may not be chiming in with responses in the chat, to please at least be taking down the information because it's very good information. We have quite a few more dones coming in, Ms. Barr.
Excellent students.
We have about
Okay.
12 to 15 completed.
Great. So we're ready to move on. That means we're ready to think about or brainstorm this topic. So let's look at the first sentence, grade 12. English, math, and science have always been core subjects in the educational system. So you should be asking yourself, what do I know about English, math, and science as it relates to them being core subjects? Number 1, we know that you have these subjects more than other subjects, don't you? Okay. Number 2, well, I should be asking you, what do we know about these core subjects, grade 12? I'm not give me some feedback. What do we know about core subjects? Since they're asking us of other subjects that we think should be core subjects, first of all, tell me what you know about core subjects. How many times a week do you have them? What are they required for? Why is so much value placed on them? What are some things you know about core subjects?
We have the mandatory.
Very good. Why are they mandatory? Why English, math, and science?
Someone says that it's 4 times a week. They're needed to graduate. These what I have. It's mandatory. They're subjects to help us get our dream jobs. They're normally 3 times a week and needed to graduate. Others say that they are 4 times a week and that they are required by jobs. They're used in our everyday lives and they're required. So the major thing is the time of the week that they do it, the fact that jobs need it, and the fact that what you're gonna do when you leave school with it.
Excellent responses, grade 12. Wow, you just blew my mind. So if this is what we say about the value of these core subjects, the question is asking you or telling you that the subjects that you come up with must also be what? Must also be what? Mandatory, required by jobs, used in everyday lives. We must make sure that the subjects we come up with are just as valuable as these core subjects, okay? You say it's a prerequisite for jobs and graduation. So the subjects that you come up with should also be beneficial to the educational system. So now you're thinking, what other subjects that are not English, math, and science should be mandatory for students? What are other subjects that we can come up with? And for today's purpose, we are going to share some ideas. Based on what we know about core subjects, what other subjects, grade 12, do you think should be core subjects? Do you have any ideas popping up in your mind right now? If you do, please put, or please give me some of your ideas of these other subjects.
We have from Star, we have religion and PE. From Teresia, we have history. We have from Kashad, family and consumer science. Kristen gave 3, religious studies, history and geography. Kenya mentioned religion. We have French, okay. We got foreign language and arcade from Lillian. We got French from Amisha. We got history from Ruthanie. Dimitri gave us PE and religious studies. Kira gave us mathematics. We also have business studies, computer, music. Okay, now students, what I'd say is that, you know, if it's not a core subject, it's an option topic. So that means, do you feel that there's an option subject, as many people have mentioned, that should be made mandatory? That means you have to study it. That means you will go to it 3 to 4 times per week.
I will also,
No, I just gonna mention there's been starting now to get them into groups, which is good. So we have Spanish, religious, and history. We have computer now that is mentioned. And guys, when you say business, remember business is very broad. Business has specific subjects underneath it. So you want to be as specific as possible. You want to be specific with the subjects. But we have a very great listing of those that I've read off, Ms. Barr. You can continue.
Thank you so much, grade 12. Now, I heard that somebody mentioned math. Now, what's the problem with math? The problem with math is already there. You cannot use math. Okay, so this means that we have to pay attention to the prompt. And sometimes some of us, we fall on the wayside, and some of us before we even finish reading, okay? And this is why it's important to read the prompt to the end. Some of us, we just see English, math, and science core subjects. We begin our essay. And you have a beautiful essay talking about how we need English, how we need math, how we need science. But the question is not asking you that at all. So that's why it's so important for you to highlight the keywords in the question, understand what it's asking you to do. Read the prompt from beginning to the end. So we can use math, okay? I heard some great answers. Okay, you gave some great answers. So that means we're brainstorming. Now, that's just the first part of brainstorm. What are you coming up with? You're coming up with the subject. So you're coming up with what? Main ideas. Okay, so main idea number one would be what? One subject. Main idea number two would be another subject that you think should be there. Main idea number three. I don't know why it's not showing up on the screen. I thought I had it there. Main idea number four. I have a question for you, grade 12. Why do you think in previous weeks, Mr. Taylor told you 5 body paragraphs, an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion? Why do you think I have a fourth circle here? Why have that there? Anybody can tell me why? Why do we need this 4th circle?
We have to close up the essay, someone says, because that's a conclusion to discuss all together.
It's not, we're doing this, not the conclusion. This is separate from the conclusion. Why do I have this here? Remember this brainstorming chart, the main ideas, this is the body of your essay. Sorry, I didn't say it explicitly. This is the body of your essay. Why do I have a 4th main idea there? Go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
Someone mentioned for extra points in case you are low on some.
Very good.
So I think Annalise is meaning like you can put that in case you may not have sufficient information to develop an idea. You can swap it out. I assume so Kashar is as a backup.
Okay. And they are correct, Mr. Taylor, because when you continue to brainstorm your ideas separately now, you want to make sure that you choose the 3 strongest points. Okay. So that's our just in case. That's what we'll call that one, our just in case right there. Okay.
Spark it out of point right there as well before you move right from there.
Go ahead.
Students also, the 2, I noticed some of you mentioned the conclusion, and the conclusion and the introduction are very much similar. So this 4th bubble also helps you that if you don't even use it as a main point, you may use that as introduction points as well. So again, it's about getting as much ideas as possible for whatever you may want to use it for. Ms. Barr?
Okay, thank you so much. So students, I want you now to go back to your notebooks where you would have written this brainstorming chart, and I want you to write the 3 or 4 subjects that you would choose that should be mandatory for all students. So in main idea 1, I want you to put the first subject that you would have chosen. Main idea number 2, I want you to put the 2nd subject that you would have chosen. Main idea number 3 and number 4. I want you to put the 4 subjects that you chose should be mandatory for all students. I will give you 1 minute to fill in your brainstorming chart. I would also like you to note, I had the note at the beginning that you could actually include subjects that are not a part of the educational system right now, but that you think should actually be on the curriculum or the syllabus. That would be fine as well.
Okay, we have Star and Tarisha coming in with Duns. Destiny as well.
Students, I am very, I'm holding back here. I can think of so many other subjects that you all should have come up with, but this is your essay. This is not my essay or Mr. Taylor's essay. This is your essay, okay? And these are, Mr. Taylor, because I'm like, oh, I can't believe they didn't think about this and different things, but we are going, this is your essay, your ideas that you are coming up with.
I'm interested to hear the reasons why. See, they're writing the subjects. They're writing the subjects, so it's you remember now you have to give your reasons why your essay asks you to elaborate fully. So even though you may think of it initially, you're starting to brainstorm web. So this is why we want you to participate, so you can see how Sometimes you may think it's a great idea that you can develop, but you'll find that you have limited information to explain fully.
Good point.
We have quite a few others coming in. Justin, technical features, technical courses, any course. Remember, guys, this is why this paper is great. As long as you are answering the prompt and relevant to the prompt, it's all about your perspective and your personal opinion. So Justin, of course, technical courses would be added. You may have even more reasons than some of the others that have been mentioned. This is why brainstorming is important. And so, guys, I'd like you to participate, and that'd be great. We have coming from Kashad family in consumer science, PE, geography, and music. I noticed that I also got some questions about how many things you can add in your body paragraph. Remember, my suggestion to you was that body part of the essay is a minimum of 3 paragraphs. Notice I said minimum. Okay, that means if you want to do a 4th body paragraph, that's fine. But also remember, you have a word limit. And so when you tend to put in those extra paragraphs, you can run into running over your word limit. The problem with going over the word limit is either being redundant or repetitive or introducing information that may throw off your essay. So I'm saying this, if you want more than 3 body paragraphs, that's fine. Make sure that you state it within your thesis statement, and make sure when you develop it, it presents new information that you have not already said before. Okay, so everyone at this point should have their 3 courses chosen or their 4 classes and should be coming up with their reasons. Ms. Barr, you may continue.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. Good. So if you would have chosen physical education, I want you to put it here. Because it's a brainstorming chart, you could put PE, okay? But remember, in your essay, I want you to be very formal and say physical education. If you chose religious knowledge, you may put RK here. But for the purpose of the essay, you are going to do what? You're going to write religious knowledge. Remember, a brainstorming chart is you jotting down your ideas. This is not your formal writing as yet. This is informal, your brainstorming chart. This is the 10 minutes you take before the exam to actually plan your essay. Now that we've filled in our main ideas for the essay, for the body of the essay, let's go on to getting some more ideas. Oh boy. So we'll go back to this chart right here, okay? Good. I don't know what happened to the other one, okay? So right here, you should have your topic. Here, you should have your main idea 1. Let me see if I can annotate for you. Okay. So you should have main idea number 1 here, main idea number 2 here, number 3, and number 4, okay? Good. They are our main points. All of this now is filled in. Now we're going to look at each point separately. Whatever that first subject is that you put there, I want you to tell me why you put that as a subject. Why would that be valuable or beneficial to the educational system? You're going to do that in these bubbles here. 1, 2, 3. Anybody can tell me right now, what do we call these 3 bubbles right here? I didn't tell you earlier, but what would it be called? Now we're expanding on our main point. When we expand on our main point, giving more ideas right here, 1, 2, and 3, what do we call? I'm going to use a heart here. What do we call these right here? 1, 2, 3. That comes from our main point.
Adam and Elisa has chimed in among Kira and Justin that it says supporting details.
Very good.
So now you're thinking about the parts of the paragraph, guys, because those main subjects that you chose, that would be your topic sentence. And so now you're going to come up with your supporting details as to why you may have chosen that particular subject for students to take.
Okay. So now we're going to come up with the supporting details. Right now, I want you to write the 3 bubbles. Remember, make it big enough so that you can include information in each one. This is informal, so don't worry about the appearance of your handwriting or anything. I want you now to expand those 4 main points which are supporting details. I want you to draw the bubbles right now. I'll give you 1 minute to do that.
And students, while you're drawing the bubble, remember last week when I showed you a brainstorm like this, sentences were not recommended because sentences tend to lock you in and you tend to just repeat that very same sentence inside the essay. Now that may work for you, that's fine, but what I want you to practice is trying to come up with the idea. So for instance, we have history. We learn about our ancestors. When you write learn about our ancestors, it makes it a bit easier than when you try to define it. If you say that it can create national pride, when you go to write your essay, you can end up with 2 to 3 sentences from just that little point. So even though you have your ideas, it's not about creating sentences. What are the ideas around it? And try to use phrases and be as brief. It'll help you much easier.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. So his point there was that you should just be jotting down ideas. Okay, you are not to write the entire essay in this plan. Remember, you're only coming up with ideas to guide you as you write. Okay, now that you would have put in your supporting details bubbles, okay, now it's time to fill them in. So what are supporting details? Supporting details, I'm going to keep it simple. And I'm going to tell you, I use the term REF. Okay, I used the term REF, I think last week. Can anybody tell me what REF stands for? R-E-F. I gave you REF to refer to supporting details. What is REF? Send your answers in the chat, please.
You have reference as a response.
It's an acronym. R stands for, E stands for, and F stands for what?
You have crickets coming from the chat. They come like they forget.
Okay, no need to worry. I'm going to go down. Okay, let's clear this. Okay, and REF simply refer to reasons, examples, and facts. I like to keep it simple when it comes to supporting details, okay? I want you to simply give reasons, examples, and facts, okay? There they are. This one, I don't know what happened to the drawing here, okay? So for each bubble that you come up with, we'll stick to this one. I want you to give me a reason, an example, and a fact to go along with that subject. So, for example, okay, let's see. You have PE as a core subject. What is a reason? What is the main reason why you chose PE? Okay. Remember, you're only jotting down ideas. What are some examples of why it's beneficial?
I have some right in the chat. And what I'm going to do is I want to show how you can take the sentences and make it a little bit more better. Okay, Shallow send these ideas. PE, because it is important for our people to be healthy. It can possibly also reduce the problem on how obesity and diabetes is common in our society. And all of those are great ideas, but sometimes writing it like that forces you to be stuck. So watch what I took from hers. I put, it teaches a healthy lifestyle. So if we teach children how to be healthy from children, they become healthy adults, and we have new eating habits, okay? With us getting new eating habits, it would reduce obesity in the Bahamas. then it would stop the spread of obesity diseases. And so the thing is that I've taken the sentences and I've now put them into about 4 points. And this is why I want to go. So we have encouraged physical health. Very good, Dimitri. So when we encourage physical health, what then happens? The children practice it. When the children get older, they practice it. They teach it to their children. So in about 20 years later, when the high schoolers today are the parents of tomorrow, would we have an obesity-ridden society, or would we have a society that's healthier? This is how you look at the progression of your discussion, guys, and what you want to explain. Go ahead, Ms. Bob.
Okay, remember, we're not going into the essay just yet. We're just coming up with ideas. This is just our plan. All of those things, or how to construct the sentences, all of those ideas. We're going to do that in the essay. Right now, we're just coming up with basic ideas, okay? As a guide for us to follow. So for PE, okay? A reason for that may be that it encourages a healthy lifestyle. The only thing I put there was healthy lifestyle. Remember, you only have 10 minutes to plan. I am going to explain that fully in my paragraph about physical education. Okay, what are some examples? Okay, you may talk about diet, you may talk about exercise. All of those are examples, or all of those are included in physical education. You're just jotting down your ideas here, grade 12, and facts. That's when I think somebody gave some facts about obesity, okay? Whereby observation, remember I tell you observation could be considered a fact. You may say 5 out of every 10 school-age children are obese. Or if you go into any classroom or whatever the case may be, you're just going to jot down these ideas. I don't want you to expand or elaborate yet. Remember, this is only the planning process. So the first one, you may have PE. I want you to come up with some reasons, examples, and facts. Just jot them down. I want you to come up also, remember you're working now. I want you with your pens and your notebooks now, and I want you filling in this brainstorm chart. Okay, so I'm gonna give you 2 to 3 minutes to do that. So you have PE. Okay, why should PE be mandatory? A good reason for that is, okay, it encourages a healthy lifestyle. So I'll write healthy lifestyle here. What are some examples of why this is important? Okay, they teach you about diet, it's exercise, all of that. Okay, now remember, when you put PE there, you're saying that we should have PE 4 times a week. I don't know how that sits with you, grade 12. You're saying that we should have this class 4 times a week for 1 hour. That's what you're telling me, because you're saying it should be a core subject. Okay? So I just wanted to make sure that, hey, whatever you put, the subjects that you put, make sure that you can support them fully. Okay? And then I want you to put some facts.
Can I just add? I want to add this tidbit. Someone said that they would love that. Students, again, let me show you about creativity. Does the PE class that you have for the 4 hours as a core subject, does it have to be set up like their PE class now? Do you always have to go on the field? Can you have a section where there's meal planning? Is there a section where we may talk about other types of training, not just sports? Or where we talk about actual physical fitness? So even if you want to go with that, you have to be creative, because that's a tough one to develop. And so I want to show you by mentioning that an original idea may sound good, but it may be difficult to present in essay format. That's what I just wanted to show with that particular example, Ms. Barr. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. And as you can see, Mr. Taylor has lots of great ideas as well when it comes to all of these subjects. Now we want to see if you can support them. These are subjects that you are choosing. So you have to make sure that you are coming up with an explanation that is valid or relevant to the topic, and that somebody can say, I can see where they're coming from. This is a very good option, or this is a very viable option to consider, okay? So I'm gonna let you fill in. I need you to fill in 1, 2, 3, 4. I want you to come up with supporting details. Remember, you're 3. If you have other supporting details that you want to include, that is fine. But remember, like Mr. Taylor said last week, You do not want to have 2 supporting details for PE and then come down here and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 for another subject. You want to make sure that all of your ideas, all of your points are what? Balanced. Remember that. Keep that in mind as well. That's why I'm having you to do 4, because you're going to choose your strongest points to write about. So Mr. Taylor, we're going to wait 5 minutes now. And when you are finished with all 4 points, I want you to put done in the chat.
Someone asked when the essay is due. You'll get that date today. Remember, this is practicing, and so you're going to look out at the practice to build each one. So once we get to the plan phase, you'll definitely get an essay due date. But I definitely guarantee that it will definitely be, if not this week, it'll be due on Monday, which means you may have the weekend to do it.
Don't worry, we're walking you through each part of the essay. Each part I am going to walk you through.
And
so
someone just mentioned that they said that they just got in. Veronica, just follow along. If you get, you can also look back at the chat. But if you get a notepad, you can copy it on the web that you see. We're brainstorming on that topic, and we're going to use that to create a plan and probably write an essay. And you're going to be doing that each of the sessions this week with the different types. Go ahead, Ms. Barr.
Okay, I'm waiting for the students to fill in the brainstorming chart.
So let's go put in the other subjects and put in your points, guys. Let's see what you have. I want to hear some of them.
I want you to fill out all 4 parts. We're giving you some time to do that.
Ms. Barr, do you still have the screen that has the stars and the hearts on it?
The problem with that is that I have to clear the screen.
Oh, you replaced it. No, that's not a problem.
Okay.
So guys, you see when you're looking at the screen, you see where you have PE? You need to go to those other ones closest to the center circle and fill that in. Put in the other subjects. I see someone said geography. So that means you'd have to put geography where that star is right there. And so you put in your geography. Now, someone sent me it says that it teaches about the economy, teaches about oil, which is used for energy, petroleum oil used for powering homes. Now, remember, we don't want to give too much details, but if you put geography next to a gold star, you would then also write geography is good for economy. You just write economy where the hearts are. Arjuna, you can ask your question. Did you type in the chat?
Okay.
I noticed you had your hand raised. And so remember, you don't want to use sentences, you want to use points, guys. So.
Okay, we're just waiting for some time has gone away from us. So we're just waiting for you to say done in the chat, meaning that you would have filled out meaning that you would have your brainstorming chart filled out. For those who are just joining us, you would need your notebook and pencil or pen. These are actually writing sessions. And the topic, once again, is English language, mathematics, and science have always been core subjects in the educational system. What are 3 other subjects that you think should be mandatory for all students? Elaborate fully. Remember, you can look at option subjects, or you can come up with completely new subjects of your own. I am so anxious to share some ideas with you, but I cannot because this is your essay.
Okay. So students, remember, if you're a student, if you're learning something, why do you think you should be learning it? How do you think it's going to help you? That it should help you be able to pull the ideas. The next thing is that remember the different reasons why you chose these different subjects. You learn language for speaking and communication. You learn math for numbers and measuring and understanding things in the world. You learn family and consumer science to deal with your daily life. You learn business to learn about how money and the different aspects of business operate. So for the topics that you've chosen, why should you study this? And remember, again, we want to go with points, okay? And you don't want to put in too many sentences or too much wording. I see some excellent ideas here. I think one of the challenges is that you guys are more concerned with how you're saying it. I think you should be more focused on what you're saying at this point, and that's what Ms. Barr is pointing out with the brainstorm and walking you through these steps. So,
yes. We just
Barr,
jotting down ideas.
what I'll do, Ms. Barr, is can I do an example verbally of Spanish, please, before we go?
No, Mr. Taylor.
No? Okay, no problem. We can make them sweat. So that means they have homework
Mr.
tonight.
Taylor.
This brainstorm.
Yes, we are anxious to help and all of that, but I really want to challenge them, okay? So in the interest of time, we're going to look at the introduction tomorrow, but tonight I want you to do me a body paragraph. If you chose PE, tell me why PE should be a mandatory subject. I need a good, valid reason. I need examples, I need facts, and this is what I usually tell students. All of these supporting details make them points. These sentences or these points shouldn't run together, okay? That's where the run-on ideas come in, okay? Even though they are based, or these supporting details are based on that topic sentence, connect your reasons and examples and facts using transitional words and phrases. Also, after you give your reasons, say also, then give me your examples. Then say additionally, give me your facts. And then you have your concluding sentence. So very quickly before we end today, I'm going to have to clear the screen. Okay, before we end today, I am just going to remind you how your paragraph should look. Okay, we're going to skip that introduction. We'll do the introduction tomorrow. So this is what I want you to do with one. I'm not going to stress you out. Just do one of your paragraphs for tomorrow. And we want to see those paragraphs. Okay, we want it to come together in an essay format. Remember, you need a topic sentence, you need supporting details, and you need a concluding sentence. By all means, you do not have to limit your supporting details to just 3. You may have 4 or 5, but make sure that all of your paragraphs are balanced. Okay, so in the interest of time, your homework is to come up with one body paragraph for me. And tomorrow we're going to do our introductions. I don't know if this Zoom can do breakout sessions whereby Mr. Taylor can take the introduction, I can take the conclusion. I'll continue to play around with it because your ideas, your paragraphs, I'm going to use 3 of you with your body paragraphs. Tomorrow we're going to come up with an introduction and a conclusion. And we're going to put this expository essay together. I am so excited, okay? So we have more things to cover, but I'll stop right there for today. If you have any questions, please ask them now. Remember, tonight you are going to write one body paragraph, okay? One of these, which is supporting details, and your concluding sentence on one of the subjects. Whether you chose PE, whether you chose consumer science, I wrote down some of your ideas. Some of you said history. Okay, it should be mandatory. Now you're going to justify your answer. Now you're going to tell me why. The prompt said to elaborate fully. So there should be no doubt in my mind when you're done that, hey, that should be a viable solution. In fact, when you're done, I should be able to say, wow, these students are so smart. This essay and these ideas are so excellent. I'm going to mail this to the Ministry of Education. We're going to send our ideas to the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd. So everybody knows their task for tomorrow. I really need you to do it. The body paragraphs, and then we're going to look at an introduction. We're going to do an introduction together. We're going to do a conclusion. We're going to put our essay together, and we're going to see how it turns out, okay? Mr. Taylor, do you have anything to add before we end this session today?
No, I just want to remind the students, remember, use today to finish off your brainstorm to help you especially, but also write the body paragraph because it will show you what you need to focus on for constructing. Ms. Barr is walking you through at a very good pace, and so therefore it is very useful that you participate, okay? And so remember, you have to write your body paragraph for why that topic should be made mandatory. That's for those that may have joined. Also, you can use the Q&A to type in questions at this point until the chat feature is made available again. But very good presentation, Ms. Bard. Students, I hope you are taking note on how to get it done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. Grade 12, I would really like to commend you for your participation in today's lesson. Please know that it's beneficial to the learning process and so that these lessons can be of value to you. So I ask that you write out your paragraphs, and so remember tonight you have some homework to write your paragraph, and tomorrow we will look at constructing the introduction and the conclusion. Until then, I want you to have a wonderful day and all the best. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session. We'll allow for other students to log in. Good morning. If the screen is visible, can someone type Y into the chat window for me, please? Once you can see the presentation on the screen. Okay, thank you. Okay, guys, today we're going to be, as we have been doing since last week, we're going to be progressing through the paper 4. This time we're going to be looking at the directed writing question specifically. I'm being assisted by Mrs. Barr, that's in the chat. For those who may not know, I am Mr. Paul Taylor. I'll be presenting today, and I'm being assisted in the chat by Mrs. LaDawn Barr, that is there to field any questions, any queries, any concerns that you may have as we progress through today's presentation. So I want to welcome you. Now, so far we've covered the writer's style question, we have covered the summary question, and we have looked at specifically one of the passages from the paper 4. As I indicated to you in previous sessions, the paper 4 has 2 different passages, but the passages are usually of 2 different types, with passage A being a narrative piece and passage B being more of a persuasive or expository piece. This is why you would find that the writer style question usually is based on the narrative passage, which is what we did yesterday and in the previous session before that. And you would also find a summary from that section. When you get to section B, you will find that you are given a second summary question. And you also must answer a directed writing question in which you must locate information from both passages, but more importantly, you must come up with an idea or 2 of your own to insert within your response. Now, the directed writing question for paper 4, despite those few adjustments in regards to it being based on 2 passages and adding in an idea of your own, it follows the very same format for the paper 3. It is important that you understand what the question is asking you. It is important that when you look at the directed writing, that there are 4 pieces of information that you need to locate from the question itself. After having done that and knowing what content you need to locate from the passage, you are then to read and then highlight that content. After highlighting that content, you should then place that content in a paraphrase outline. What do I mean by paraphrase outline? Rewrite the passage content in your own words to answer the question, but more importantly, try to begin to group and organize the similar ideas so you can construct your final answer. And so in these sessions, not just today, but more than likely tomorrow and the session after, by the end of these sessions, you will be able to analyze a directed writing prompt in order to determine the requirements. You'll be able to distinguish the features of the directed writing prompt. You will be able to locate and synthesize content relevant to the prompt. You also then to outline. You'll also be able to outline the features of extended writing language style criteria. That simply means I'm going to show you the level of writing and the level of sophistication you are expected so that you can meet that, along with locating the content. And last but not least, you'll be able to organize and construct an effective directed writing response. Now, this is the directed writing prompt here on the screen. Now, the first step when doing paper 3 or paper 4 is to read the questions. The directed writing question is the most expensive question on the test. When I gave you instruction concerning paper 3, I said to you that when you are reading a directed writing question, that there are 4 pieces of information or 4 key areas you should seek to define when reading the question. Can someone please place, if you know all, you can place all 4. But if not, can you please give me one of those areas that you should seek to find information on when you're reading directed writing question? So when reading directed writing question, what are the 4 pieces of information you should locate or extract from that question itself, please? As I read the question aloud, please place in the chat what those 4 areas are, if your memory serves you well. A teacher in training has approached you and asked, quote, what different kinds of behavior should I expect from students in the high school classroom? Using ideas based on information from passage A and B, write your advice. In your response, you are expected to A, develop ideas clearly and logically, and B, include 1 or 2 ideas of your own. So this is the first step in approaching any comprehension paper with reading the question. So I just read that question aloud. You were supposed to find 4 specific bits of information. Can you tell me what those 4 bits of information are? Remember to type it in the chat, please.
Nobody has yet, Mr. Taylor. I gave them some hints like you did the week before. One begins with an F, one begins with an A. And you remember when we did that, students? Can you remember them?
Well, I anticipated as such. So I've read the question and I've highlighted the important information. Gonna read the question again with the areas and highlight. A teacher in training has approached you and asked, what different kinds of behavior should I expect from students in the high school classroom? Using ideas based on information from passages A and B, write your advice. In your response, you are expected to develop ideas clearly and logically. Include 1 or 2 ideas of your own, 16 marks. Does anyone know what each of those highlighted areas represent? No? Cool. The first one is the writer. Now, I highlighted this, but that doesn't mean that I'm the writer. The writer says the teacher in training has approached you and asked. So that means I highlighted that in the question because I must infer who I am. If it's a teacher in training asking a question, obviously you are what type of teacher? If a teacher in training is asking you the question and you have to answer this question, what teacher are you? Well, no problem. Anyhow, next, your audience would be a teacher in training. Well, again, all of this is coming from the question. Your format would be an advice, but it also said approach you and asked. The content that you should be looking for from the passage are what are the different kinds of behaviors I should expect in students in the high school classroom. And you also to include 1 or 2 ideas of your own for about 16 marks. Anytime you're reading it. Yes,
Sorry, we have one answer coming in for the first part. An experienced teacher. You are the experienced teacher.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That's correct. But if you notice, they did not state that in the question. They didn't tell you who you were. You had to use your inference skills. This is why I highlighted the actual question part that says a teacher in training has approached you and asked. You have to figure out who you are as the writer. Who is your audience? You're talking to the teacher in training. Next, your format in this case, would be your advice, but approached you and asked. So that does not tell you specifically what you have to write. Again, on this page, all I've done is taken the highlighted points from the question that I highlighted here. This is the question as is with my highlights. And all I did is extract it and broke it down. Any directed writing question, regardless of paper 3 or paper 4, you must find out who's the writer, the audience, format, and content. At the paper 4 level, much of those answers must be inferred. Now, if you have to give someone advice and someone walked and asked you something, obviously you're not sending them a letter. Obviously you're not writing an article. If you have to give it verbally, that means the type of answer that you're writing is a what? Moving ahead. If you're not certain what your question is about or how to rephrase the question wants from you, at the very top of the screen, I have a sentence template that you can use. It says candidates must write insert format that outlines insert content while pretending to be insert writer, addressing insert audience. If you find the 4 pieces of information from the directed writing question, creating the sentence helps you understand what answer you have to write. If you look at the screen carefully, they tell you what information they want you to include. But a less than aware candidate or candidate that does not actively read may end up writing this answer from the perspective of a teacher in training, as opposed to the senior teacher that is advising this teacher in training. They ask you what kinds of behavior should you expect in students, but they didn't say just any students, they said in a high school classroom. If you remember from passage 8 that we read yesterday, the teacher was teaching a class of 16-year-olds. That's a high school classroom. That means in that narrative piece, all of the antics and the behaviors of the students are what you should be highlighting to put in this particular response. When you get to passage B is an expository piece that speaks about school violence. That also goes into student behaviors. You must locate information from that on how would students behave in the high school classroom. But even more importantly, you have to come up with 2 ideas of your own that would reflect how students behave in the classroom that was not presented in either text. Now, the thing is, they ask you what behavior to expect from the students, and then they say, your advice. What do they mean by your advice? Because this teacher is someone in training, they have not been in the classroom to experience the different behaviors of students. So it's going to be your job in a very organized, clear, and direct manner to explain to them what would be these behaviors that student would expect, meaning that she can expect from students. Furthermore, when you write these behaviors, you must group them together according to similarity. This is where your paragraphing now comes in. So you're going to find that some behaviors are repetitive, some behaviors are connected, some behaviors require a little bit more explanation. But the step that I'm stopping here now at and taking my time with is actually unlocking the question. If you're not able to find the writer, the audience, and the format and the content for your directed writing question, constructing this answer will be a problem for you. So therefore, what must students do? I must write an advisory speech that outlines behavior to expect from students in the high school classroom, pretending to be a senior teacher, addressing a student teacher. So if you didn't understand what I said on the previous screen about format, content, and writer, and audience, this is what that means. An advisory speech. That means that the answer that you write must have a conversational tone. You must basically address your audience. You must give a pretext to what you're talking about. All this comes into organizing your answer, and we haven't even gotten to the content as yet. At this point, are there any questions? Are there any queries, any concerns? Ms. Barr, are there any elaborations or anything you would like to add?
There are no questions in the chat at this time, Mr. Taylor. Just one note, if you go back to the previous screen, sometimes it helps if students label the question with the things they have to do, 1, 2, or A, B, C, just as a guide to help to keep them focused when they are writing. So like how you have here, what are the different kinds of behavior? That's the first thing you ought to do, find the kinds of behavior so you know what your tasks are. The second thing would be what to expect from the students. So you just want to highlight it, number it if you have to, or label it A, B, C in the question, just to give you a little focus. And if you could, you can even write up a little columns to create your plan before you actually write. That is all, Mr. Taylor. You may continue.
Now that we know what we have to do, we need to locate and paraphrase the content from the passage. Given that I have non-participants in my room, it just makes sense just to read the passage for everybody to hear. It's not all time for the continuous crickets, so you'd understand what I have in the rest of the, what I have in the remainder of the slide. So for your benefit, I'm going to read passage B. for you to see what you're expected to do. Even more importantly, I'm going to show you how you should have highlighted, and you're going to see how it's translated. Is the passage visible?
Yes, sir, it is.
We're now at section B. This is the expository piece that speaks about school violence. School violence. The escalating and disturbing incidents of school violence seen at all school levels are causing immense concern. Those severe tantrums displayed through kicking, screaming, and destroying items by the kindergarten child or the high schooler are a form of school violence. Then there are the student-on-student conflicts, ranging from the 5th grade bully who taunts his classmates, to the 8th grade girls who beat and emotionally harass another girl, to the senior high student who brings a gun to school and threatens to or actually shoots one of his peers. Emotional violence in the form of severe teasing and harassment, which is quite often viewed as potentially worse than physical violence, is rampant among students. Additionally, other phases of violence in schools may include student-on-teacher assaults. It is against this background that concerned educators believe that vigorous steps ought to be taken to reduce violence in school. Indeed, it is the duty of all stakeholders within the educational setting to ensure that students and their teachers can benefit from sharing a safe and productive environment where teaching and learning can be exciting and occur without fear. One of the most influential groups of stakeholders is composed of parents or guardians whose contact with their children during the latter's formative years can have a great impact on whether their behavior is violent or non-violent. Research has shown that children learn at their fastest between ages 1 to 3. This means that when their children are very young, parents need to do more than ensuring that their children are healthy in body. They should also seek to ensure that they acquire positive social skills, as well as the ability to differentiate between right and wrong behaviors. What these stakeholders do often has a vast impact on their children's body, mind, and emotions. Community activists also have a great part to play, as children ought to be well socialized. When these activists ensure that children participate in sports, community service, and other activities organized by community clubs and churches, they are seeing to it that they gain adequate social exposure. What are the benefits of this exposure? It is that children who receive it may most likely emulate and display admirable social and moral behaviors. Moreover, using the professional skills of social workers and guidance counselors who are trained in mentorship skills of guidance and counseling can prove invaluable. When these stakeholders are placed in schools, they can provide the necessary supervision and support many children need to reduce or resolve challenges related to schoolwork or social issues such as pressure to drink, smoke, or use illegal drugs in school or away, family problems, and other common difficulties associated with growing up. The case of placing social workers in school is further strengthened by the fact that their daily presence put them in the position of knowing the students' problems or those who are problems. However, it would be unrealistic to expect the social workers and counselors to wear the shoes of parents. In no way should they be regarded as replacements. A school-wide approach, which focuses upon both prevention and intervention, is very effective in reducing violence, especially if it is put into practice at the early childhood level by school administrators and teachers, undeniably two very important stakeholders. At the early childhood level, administrators and teachers should target the entire school population, with the aim being mainly to prevent violent behaviors from occurring, as young children are more cooperative and receptive than older ones to new strategies and activities that would improve their well-being. Once success is attained at this prevention level, children are likely to display excellent coping skills, thus reducing the possibility of the increase in violent behaviors in schools. This is not to say challenges will not occur, since some students are considered to be at risk. This group of students, whether in primary or secondary school, may encounter academic difficulty or negative reaction to daily stresses. These are all signals that are screaming out, please help these children. Such at-risk children can receive great assistance from the intervention program in the school-wide approach, which is specifically designed to target them. The final stage of the intervention program is extensive and provides special help for those students who are showing extreme symptoms of academic, behavioral, and emotional disorders. What should we expect from the school-wide approach? Well, in this approach, administrators and teachers make it easier for students to learn practical behaviors, including caring, empathy, respect, and responsible decision-making. They provide numerous opportunities. For students to learn and practice appropriate behaviors, work through conflict resolution, and acquire a common language for expressing the way they feel. In addition to catering to the social and emotional growth of the child, a safe school program is also offered, targeting such areas as a consistent code of behavior, appropriate discipline procedures, adequate adult supervision within all areas of the school, and school-based crisis prevention. Essential in schools that are battling school violence is the partnership between educators and another group of stakeholders, law enforcement officers. These officers are usually experts at establishing anger management programs. When an act of violence is committed in schools and is in contempt of the laws of the court, law enforcement officers are well trained to handle such matters. Teaching students to understand and control anger is critical. In implementing anger management programs, school-based police officers are an asset. Anger management programs typically include several steps, including A, educating students about anger and aggression, B, helping students to recognize anger cues and to activate self-calming strategies, and C, providing students with problem-solving skills training, which assists them in identifying non-aggressive solutions to everyday stressful situations. Arguably, top-level Ministry of Education officials and supportive business enterprises make the most important contributions to school-wide programs to combat violence. Can only be effective if ministry officials design policies to put them in place, complete with the necessary staff to operate them. Also, these school-wide programs can only become a reality with adequate financing. Among other things, it is vital for these two stakeholders to provide funds for the adequate training and hiring of individuals to work within schools at reducing school violence. The financial cost is enormous, but the investment is worth it. Violent behavior is a serious problem for schools and communities, and there are no easy or quick solutions to ensuring a safe and supportive school environment. However, since beyond a doubt, violent behavior can be reduced by focusing on prevention and interventions, stakeholders should embrace the opportunities to face the challenges in this way. Adapted from Diffusing Violent Behavior in Schools by Diane L. Smallwood and Evangeline Curran, policeone.com, 2006. That's the second passage. As you can see, it is starkly different from the previous passage, and it is very technical in its language. Is the screen visible?
Not as yet. There we go. We're back to the paper 4 that you just read.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This one that I pulled up is the one that has all of the highlights on it, because I want you to see everything that is highlighted in green is everything that is related to the directed writing question.
Okay, so the
And
first, sorry, Mr. Taylor, I'll just converse with you representing the students. So the first thing we're highlighting is the behaviors, right?
Our job is to locate behaviors in the classroom, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're looking for behaviors now, students. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
So all of this that I have highlighted within this document is on a slide or are on slides within the presentation. But what I'm doing here is I want to show you physically what you should be doing in the exam. Just how I physically sat and highlighted everything where I saw an actual behavior or an action from students is what you should have been doing if you were answering this question in the examination.
So
I also want you to realize, yes,
right, Mr. Taylor, pause right there. So that means in order for me to do this, I should have read the questions before I read the passage, right?
Yes, ma'am.
This is just a gentle reminder to students, please read the questions first, understand it, and then you go to the passage so you know what to highlight and what information is key to answering that question. Okay, you may continue, Mr. Taylor.
And so by actually just looking at this, and we're going to go into it in the presentation, I want you to realize that the content is spread all throughout the passage, and it is not just in one place. More importantly, even though you highlighted those, again, everything in green is related to number 4. If you see this highlight in blue, that is related to question number 3, where we had to do with the stakeholders, which was the first summary question that we did. So your paper should be looking like this in your exam, highlighting. And as you can see, for your paper 4, it seems that there's less information to locate in these behaviors because much of it is inferred. And so I want you to see, 1, if you do not physically highlight on your paper, you would definitely miss content. 2, if you do not extract the requirements from the question before beginning to attempt, you will find that you do not know what you're looking for, and you're going to waste your time, and you're going to end up lifting heavy chunks of the passage, or even worse, actually write a response that does not specifically answer the prompt. Now, after the presentation is visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the question that you are looking for is, what kinds of behavior should I expect from students in the high school classroom? These are the first set of highlights, and I arranged it according to passage. So you're going to see all from passage A first, and you're going to notice the shift in language to show that we are now at passage B. The first piece that I highlighted, and I'm just going to read it as I wrote it. As you can see, these are obviously extracted from the passage. A boy named Petey called out, "Anyone want a bologna sandwich?" Petey threw his brown paper bag sandwich at the critic, Andy, and the class cheered, "Fight, fight, fight." They said, "Fight, fight." They ignored me. They were busy promoting the fight that would kill time and divert from any lesson I might be planning. All of these are written as is. If you look at the heading of this slide, it says locate passage content. So what I just showed you highlighted in Microsoft Word document, in that Microsoft Word document just now, all of that is this right here, but just in a bulleted format. Each of these are different points that I've gathered. Fourth one, Benny called out from the back of the room, "Hey, teach, he already threw the sandwich. No use telling him now, don't throw the sandwich. There's the sandwich on the floor. They're on the floor." The class laughed. There's nothing sillier in the world than a teacher telling you don't do it after you already did it. One boy covered his mouth and said, "Stupid," and I knew he was referring to me. How do I translate that? The first one with the young boy shouting out, "Anyone want a sandwich?" Talking aloud without permission. The young man then decides to throw the sandwich at the next young man, throw missiles around the class. The class gets up and cheer fights. They encourage fights, or they cheer on combatants. Combatants are the people that are fighting. Next, distract the teacher from lesson with disruptive behavior to stall lesson. Next, openly point out mistakes in instruction made by the teacher. Next, laugh at and ridicule by students when making mistakes. So remember, you're writing advice on this teacher on what kinds of behavior she can expect or they can expect once entering the classroom. And you notice I took that passage information and I translated it into behavior. So when you look back at the first slide, a boy named Petey called out, "Anyone want a bologna sandwich?" That's talking aloud without permission. Petey threw his brown paper sandwich bag at the critic, Andy, and the class cheered. "Fight, fight, fight," they said, "fight, fight, fight." Encourages fights or cheer on combatants. They ignored me. They were busy promoting the fight that would kill time and divert from any lesson I might be planning. Distract teacher from lesson with disruptive behaviors to stall lesson. Teacher, he'll already throw the sandwich. No use telling him throw the sandwich, he's already on the floor. Openly point out mistakes in instruction made by the teacher. The class laughed. There's nothing silly in the world, and it's sillier in the world than a teacher telling you don't do it after you've already did it, Laugh at and ridicule by students when making mistakes. This is what you're expected to do. Next set of content. Someone said, yo, Benny, you a lawyer, man? And the class laughed again. Yeah, they said, and waited for my move. What will this new teacher do? What did that represent? They challenged authority with disruptive behavior to get a response from teacher. The class said, yeah, in a way that showed that they were on my side if I had trouble with the principal. My first experience of teacher-student solidarity. In the classroom, your students might stall and complain, but when a principal or any other outsider appeared, there was an immediate unity, a solid front. Defend or support teacher if there is trouble from administration, parents, or anyone not a part of the class. Sandwich attracted attention of the class. They gawked up at me, 34 boys and girls, average age 16. I could see the admiration in their eyes. First teacher in their lives to pick up a sandwich from the floor and eat it in full view. Sandwich man. In my boyhood in Ireland, we admired one schoolmaster who peeled and ate an apple every day and rewarded good boys with the long peel. They would watch in admiration when a teacher shows skill or exert classroom management strategies. That's all that's saying. Next set of content. Now we're getting to the expository pieces. If you notice, it was very easy to locate all of those content because the narrative is in the classroom. So the behavior that the students do is your evidence of what to expect in the classroom for teaching training. Next. Severe tantrums displayed through kicking, screaming, and destroying items by the kindergarten child or the high schooler are a form of school violence. Openly share, oh, that's the wrong slide. Slide got mixed up. This slide I had prepared for YouTube. I had prepared this slide for us to do a discussion, but apparently the discussion ain't working. So what I'll do is I'll just type the responses or the summaries, the paraphrase that I expected within the chat, just in the interest of time.
Let's try with one or two, Mr. Taylor.
Pardon?
Let's try with one or two. Let's see what they come up with.
I don't want to pull any teeth anymore. I just want to get through this presentation and be done.
Okay.
Severe tantrums displayed through kicking, screaming, and destroying items by the kindergarten child or high school are a form of school violence. So tantrums displayed, so that'll be fits of anger. So what behavior can I expect? I can expect fits of anger. I can expect physical violence. And I can expect destruction of property. Those are behaviors that I can expect from the high school student. Okay, destruction of property. So that is how I would translate that particular piece. Okay, next, student on teacher assaults. This is as is written. Student attacks on teacher. Okay, next, it says here, children need to reduce or resolve challenges related to schoolwork, social issues such as pressure to drink, smoke, or use illegal drugs in school. Now, using the drugs in the classroom are an issue. And when they say challenges related to schoolwork, that very simply means that children underperform academically. So that is how I would translate that. Children underperform academically because remember, it's within this classroom. Even though they may mention the pressure to drink, smoke, or use illegal drugs in school, that necessarily does not talk about the behavior to expect in the classroom. When it now says that children have challenges related to schoolwork, that means that they will underperform academically. That's a behavior to expect. Okay, enough trouble with kids sneaking little nibbles during morning classes and attracting cockroaches and various rodents. That simply means students eating class. All of these are the behaviors that a teacher in training can expect. Okay, sandwich, but I did it out of desperation, or I did it to teach a lesson about waste and to show them who was in charge. Okay, what is this saying here? If you had to show them who was in charge with the whole sandwich thing, and by eating the sandwich you regain this control, they would also challenge your authority and classroom management style. And so that is how I would have summarized all of those points that came from the passage, the same way that you expected to summarize it moving forward.
Do we also see littering coming out anywhere there, Mr. Taylor? What do you think?
I'll go back to the screen.
The idea, because for the rats and the rodents to come, it gives the idea that students are not eating cautiously. And then the idea that the sandwich was on the floor, they didn't care to throw it on the floor. Just throwing it out there as another thought.
No, it is relevant as well. Again, a lot of the behaviors are to be inferred, and you are correct in inferring that.
Right.
If the roaches are gathered and the rats gather, that means that the food is readily available. If students are eating in class, and notice it says sneaking little nibbles, that means that it is either in a desk, or that means that it's in a bag, and it will be disposed of in a desk. So that is correct. Also, remember that you're allowed to include 1 or 2 ideas of your own that may only be hinted at or that may not be presented in the task as well, in the text as well. And so that also offers accuracy. And so again, you're supposed to have read the passage, highlighted the information, and now it's at the point where we're putting the information in our own words so that we know how to group them together to construct an effective response. Okay, so that particular one I had, openly share about parents to teacher, destruction of property, physical aggression, and fits of anger, student on teacher assaults, and last but not least, eating during class time, and we can expand that to mean littering or leaving trash along the compound. Next, children need to reduce or resolve issues such as, that one is repeated. Next one, encounter academic difficulty or negative reaction to daily stresses. These are exactly highlighted from it as it is taken from the passage. When it says encounter academic difficulty, academic refers to your grades. Academic difficulty means, again, that you're underperforming academically. But the more important one are negative reactions to daily stresses. Okay? Negative reactions to daily stresses. That very simply means, again, fits of anger, bursts, outbursts. You'll see on the next screen what it means. Symptoms of academic, behavioral, or emotional disorders. If you have academic, behavioral, or emotional disorders, that means that it's not working. That means that your academic skills may be inconsistent, your behavior is erratic or inconsistent and especially or abnormal, and emotional disorders mean that you react poorly to different situations. Again, the answer that you're writing, you're expected to say what are behaviors that students would show. Fourth point, or the fourth piece of content highlighted from the passage, student on student conflicts ranging from the fifth grade bully who taunts classmates, taunts is another word, tease, to the 8th grade girls who beat and emotionally harass another girl, to the senior high student who brings a gun to school and threatens to or actually shoots one of his peers. Emotional violence in the form of severe teasing and harassment. Now, what does that translate to? 1, they find it difficult to meet academic requirements. 2, they have adverse responses to stressful situations. That can include loud outbursts or physical aggression. Next, they have inconsistent or abnormal social and emotional behavior. Next, they can physically and emotionally taunt others. Next, they can threaten to use or bring weapons to harm fellow students. Okay, so that's other behaviors that you can expect. That is the end of the slide.
So the behaviors
Now
are just one of the question, right, Mr. Taylor?
The behavior is only the part, because remember, you have to give them advice. So if you're going to tell someone about the behavior that they encountered, it's more than likely assumed that you're also going to tell them how to deal with it. Even more importantly, we've only stopped at the very first step of locating the content. We have not yet, and we have located and translated, but we have not organized it, and we have not similarly grouped them together. What do I mean by similarly grouped them together? If you notice, there were things that spoke about emotional behavior. There were things that spoke about physical behavior. There were things that spoke about academic and social performance. And so you're gonna have to take all of them and group them together. And in tomorrow's sessions, you're gonna see that. And so as a result of that, what you have to realize is that when approaching the directed writing question for paper 4, you must read the question and extract from it the writer, the format, the audience, and the content. For the paper 4, you're gonna have to infer much of that information. Secondly, once you know what you are looking for and you read the passage, you must actively read and highlight the information that is needed. And in highlighting the information that is needed, afterwards, it's going to be your job to then translate that information into paraphrase terms in which you use your own words. And also you may have to rephrase it to actually rephrase the idea to suit the question that you're being asked. And so in tomorrow's session, you're going to see the very same paraphrase points grouped and organized into an outline and a sample response on what's expected of the paper 4. Are there any questions, queries, concerns, or elaborations?
We have one question coming from the chat, the Q&A, and it is asking, can you explain why you use the word academic in its definition? I'm not quite sure if they're referring to in the passage. I know
the passage says, I think I understand what I mean. What do I mean when I say the passage said schoolwork? Anytime someone refers to academic, that's referred to formal education. That refers to any form of formal education. So when I say academic performance, that means students are not making the grades. In the passage, it said schoolwork. So my synonym or my paraphrase for it is academic. I trust that that answered the question.
I'm thinking that it did. We have no other questions from the chat at the time.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor, I would like them to ask to put a Y in the chat if everything is clear. Just put a Y in the chat. And if you think you need a little bit more time or elaboration, you can put a no. If some things are unclear, put an N for no. So just put your Y or N in the chat so we can get an idea of how you're dealing with this question. Okay, Mr. Taylor, we have 3 Ys, 1 N. Okay, the Ys are coming in. Everything is clear.
Super. Okay, well, that's today's session for today. When we get in tomorrow, we'll be looking at the response and how you should have grouped the responses together. Thank you for your attendance and your participation. Do continue to be safe and enjoy your day.
Okay, awesome. Morning again, everyone. So we're going to get started again, just as a reminder, what you will need for this lesson: calculator, some paper, and a writing utensil, a pen preferably. Just also good morning to my moderators, Mrs. Brown Hall, as well as Mr. Tinker. And we also have another moderator, so they're going to be able to answer all of your questions. I'm also going to try to answer them live. Let's get started. So today, we're going to focus on past BGCSE questions on hire purchase. I know in our last session, I think it was Star Knowles that had asked for more examples, and so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you questions, give you an opportunity to work the question, and then we'll work them together. Our objective for today: by the end of the lesson, students will be able to solve BGCSE past paper questions involving hire purchase. So we're going to remind ourselves what hire purchase is about by watching this short video.
Hire purchase, or HP, is one of a number of finance products available to car buyers, which allows you to spread the cost of the car over a period of time. It's ideal for buyers who want to own the car outright at the end of their finance contract. Just like a mobile phone contract, you'll typically pay an initial deposit towards the car, and the finance lender will loan you the remaining amount with added interest charges, which you'll then pay back in monthly instalments over an agreed period, normally between 3 to 5 years. Due to the interest, you'll normally end up paying back more than you borrowed. With hire purchase, the interest rates and monthly payments are usually fixed for the duration of your finance contract, making it easier for you to manage your outgoings. The deposit and the length of the contract can usually be adjusted to help you find the monthly payment that fits your ideal budget. And because the vehicle usually acts as a security for the finance agreement, other forms of credit will remain available to you, such as credit cards, subject to your credit status. Most car finance agreements are secured against the car, so if for any reason you're unable to keep up with your monthly payments, the finance lender will only take back the car and your assets won't be at risk. A hire purchase agreement can also be settled at any time, normally without you having to pay any fees if you decide to pay it off early, although you should always check this with the dealership you hold the finance agreement with. At the end of your agreement, you'll own the vehicle and can do whatever you like with it. Watch our other videos on the various types of finance available to you.
Okay, awesome. So again, let's remind ourselves to the steps to working through a hire purchase problem. Oftentimes, you're going to have to find the deposit if it's not been already given to you. Then you're going to have to find the total monthly payments. And finally, you end by finding the total hire purchase price. As was brought out in the video, the hire purchase price is usually going to be, or typically, it's more than the cash price. All right. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to display a question. I'll read through it. Then I'll give you 10 minutes to attempt the question on your own. And I'm going to pause and give you a full 10 minutes. And then we'll do it together. So here's the question. Again, this is a BGCSE question, a question you could potentially see or something very similar when you sit your exam. It says, Mrs. Cook bought a microwave on hire purchase. The cash price was $297.80. She paid a deposit of 15% deposit, followed by 12 monthly payments of $24,890 per month. Calculate A, the amount of the deposit, B, the total amount of the monthly payments, C, the hire purchase price on the microwave, and D, the amount saved by paying cash. So you have 10 minutes. Go ahead and begin the question. While you work it, I'm going to highlight some pieces of information that I think are important in the question. So like we know the cash price is important. The amount of the deposit is also important. And then this part about the 12 monthly payments. And what I like about these questions, specifically hire purchase, for the most part, they're straightforward. You know, find the deposit. The total monthly payments are also pretty straightforward to find. And the hire purchase price is just putting the two together. So if I'm not mistaken, this question comes from the 2004 paper 2 exam. And hire purchase can come either on paper 1 or paper 2. So you have to be prepared in any event. Oh, I see some questions in the Q&A, so let me look at those. Oh, this Tristan Smith is on the money, man. So we're going to, let me check your time. You have about 3 minutes left. I'm glad to see that some persons have completed the question. Everyone else, you have about 3 minutes to finish it off. Now, Tristan, I do notice a slight error with one of your answers. So can you go back and check them for me, please? I see Daniel also put an answer for A and B and C. I don't know, these numbers are slightly off. So in the next 2 minutes, just check over your work. Make sure, check over. And then we'll do it together. But Tristan, I need you to check your C and D. Daniel, I also need you to check your B and C for the answers that you would have posted. Alrighty, let's move on. I see Brene also put up an answer for A. We're going to move on. Now let's work through the question. Everyone should have attempted some part of it and have some answer. So again, just to read through it, Mrs. Cook brought a microwave on hire purchase. The cash price was $297.80. She paid a 15% deposit, followed by 12 monthly payments of $24.90 per month. Calculate A, the amount of the deposit. Well, I'm going to look at what part of the question speaks to the deposit. And I know it's this part here that says 15% deposit, which will be calculated on the cash price. So I'm going to work that part first. And I'm going to say 297. Oh, let me move that. That's my point. Alrighty. 297.80 times 15%. Once I put that into my calculator, as was said in the chat by a few persons, congratulations if you got it, 44.67. 44.67. If you got this so far, good job. Now let's move on to the next part of the question. Part B asks me to calculate the total monthly payments. I know that the total monthly payments are going to be $24.90. And since she has to pay them off for 12 months, I'm going to multiply by 12. When I do that, her total monthly payments are going to be $298.80. All right, so let's look at what we know so far. We know that her deposit was $44.67 and her total monthly payments were $298.80. So to find her higher purchase price, part C, I add them both together. So I'm going to add $44.67 plus $298.80. So her total higher purchase price is going to be $343.47. $343.47. All right, if you didn't get that, please check your working and make corrections. And then to finish up, to answer the last part of the question, how much money can be saved by paying cash? And remember, it's always going to be cheaper or more cost effective to pay cash, but sometimes that's not an option. So to find the difference, we take our higher purchase price, which was $343.47, and subtract from that the cash price, $297.80. And so if she had paid cash, she would have saved a total of $45.67. I see Mr. Tinker is also putting some working in the chat in case you need to go over what I would have missed. Or, if I move too quickly. So let's look at our second question. It says, and again, this is another question from the BGCSE. Speedy Wheels advertises the following special on a used car for $8,500. They tell me that the term payment plan consists of a 20% deposit plus 18 monthly payments of $505. So they give you 4 things to calculate. A, the amount of the deposit. B, the total monthly payments. C, the total cost on the term payment plan. And then D, the difference between the cash price and the amount paid using the term payment plan. All right, so 10 minutes was too long last time, so I'm going to give you a shorter time. Go ahead and work through the question. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I did see some responses in the group. I see some persons also posting them in the chat. So let's confirm your responses. I start by working on the amount of the deposit. And I want to show you another way that you can work this question. Because what I have been doing so far, I have been saying 8,500, times 20%. And for the most part, I use the percent button on my calculator. But what if you don't know how to find that as easily or as readily? You can also rewrite it as a decimal. You can rewrite 20% as a decimal. So I'm going to put or 8,500. And I know to turn it into a decimal, I just divide by 100. So 8,500 times 0.20. And these two mean the same thing. 20% written as a decimal becomes 0.20. Once I put that into my calculator, my deposit price is $1,700. And so in real life, what that means is if I want to walk off that car lot with that car, I have to come with at least $1,700 to pay for that car. Right? Now let's move on to part, and I love the responses I'm seeing in the group chats, or in the chat, I should say. Let's move on to B now. B asked me to find the total monthly payments. Remember now, to find the total monthly payments, I take the amount I pay each month and multiply by the amount of months I have to pay. So if I'm paying $505 for 18 months, here's my working. And I put that into my calculator. In total, my monthly payments are going to be $9,090. So far, let's review what we know. We know that the deposit is $1,700. The total monthly payments are $9,090. So C is going to ask me now to find the total hire purchase price. We know that the hire purchase price is always going to be the deposit plus the total monthly payments. And this year, this question actually gave you a clue to that, because they told you that it's the deposit plus the 18 monthly payments. So let's add those two together. We have $1,700 plus $9,090. When I add them together, my total hire purchase price, or the term payment plan in this case, is going to be $10,790. And we can see that this is a good bit more than just paying cash. But again, some persons don't have the option to just pay cash outright. And so the hire purchase plan, the financing plan, would be better for them. Let's finish it off by looking at D. D says the difference between the cash price and the amount paid using the term payment plan. So I know my term payment plan was $10,790, and I'm going to subtract from that $8,500. So I can actually save $2,290 if I pay cash. But for some persons, they can't afford that, and so they have to use the hire purchase plan, and that's okay. Alrighty, let's look at another question. I'm not going to read it. You're going to go ahead and get started. And yes, awesome job to those persons that are answering in the chat as well as the Q&A. Really good job, guys. Oh, I'm sorry. I know you can't see it. Let me just... This question is a bit different, but I still think that you can handle it. You have to remember what the word balance means. Balance is what's left after I pay my deposit. Yes, Tatiana is correct. The question is a bit different. It requires you to think a little bit differently. All right, so you have about 2 more minutes. Awesome, Tatiana. I see you saying you got it. A is $18,000 from someone in the Q&A. I would ask you to go ahead and check that, my anonymous attendee. So it says Maria bought a 5-piece furniture set for $21.50. And then they also tell me things like she made a down payment of $750 and obtained a loan from the bank for the balance. So I'm going to work on finding the balance. Here's what I know. I know that she paid, the original bill was $20.50 and she paid $750. And so for me to find her balance, I need to subtract. And when I do my subtraction, her balance is going to be equal to $1,400. All right, that's her balance. Now let's go ahead and work on the next part of the question. All right, so let me go back to my texts. All right, that was part A. Let's look at part B now. They say to me, part B, after 2 years of equal monthly payments, she repaid the bank $1,680. How much interest does she pay? Let's focus on what they mean by interest. You know, usually when you make a loan or you borrow some money, you have to pay an additional amount back. That's interest. And so we know that she borrowed $1,400. But the question tells me that she repaid $1,680. So she had to pay back a little bit more than she borrowed. What she paid back was $1,680, but she borrowed $1,400. So that extra had to be considered interest. And so I'm going to subtract to find out how much interest she paid. Her interest was equal to, when I subtract, $280. Part C. Part C asks me to tell how or what was her monthly payments. Well, let's look at how long it took her to pay this loan off. They tell me 2 years, but the question didn't ask me about years. They're asking me about monthly payments. So I need to know 2 years equal to how many months. I can find that easily by multiplying 12, since there are 12 months in a year, times 2. 12 times 2, when I multiply it out, that's going to give me 24 months. So she had been paying this amount, how much ever it is, for 24 months. So we're going to find out. And so she paid $1,680 equally over the 12 months. So I'm going to do $1,680 divided by 24. And when I divide that out, my answer is going to be $70. So we know that for each month, for 24 months, she paid $70 until she had finished paying off her balance. Now, final part of the question, part D. What was the total amount paid for the furniture? Well, we know when we go back to the hire purchase plan, the total amount is always going to be the deposit plus the total monthly payments. So her deposit in the question told me was $750 plus her total monthly payments, which were $1,680. And so her total amount paid for the furniture, when I work it out, is $2,430. Just checking in the Q&A. So I see my anonymous attendee says, okay, so I guess they figured out what they did wrong, where the mistake was. Again, if you made any mistakes, go ahead and just make your corrections now, please. And we're going to look at one more question before we end this session today. All right, so that's the final question for today. Go ahead and work through it for me, please. And I see some responses in the Q&A section already. Make sure we're putting in our commas, decimal points. Thank you, Indira. I'm gonna give you a few more minutes to work through it. Okay, so I'm gonna give you another minute. I see, I don't know, the anonymous attendee. I wish you would put your name. I think this person just about finished the question. Bernardo Thomas is also working through it quite well. Gabriel Mackey, your response looks good so far. Okay, these answers look awesome. So I'm just gonna give you another minute to finish up, and then we'll look through the question together. All right, so let's go ahead and see if we can answer this question. So right here, I'm gonna add a text box beside each question. So again, just to read through the question, it says to me the price of a tablet is $699. There's a discount of 12% for cash payments. A, calculate the amount of the discount for cash payment. Well, they say they're going to take 12% off. So A, part I first need to know what 12% of $699 is. So I'm going to put into my calculator $699 times 12%. Let me bring that over a little. Times 12%. Once I calculate that, I determine that my discount is actually $83.88. And so I know a discount means that they're going to reduce my price or take that amount off. So when I'm paying cash, instead of paying $699, I actually end up paying a little bit less. So let's work on the second part of this question. My cash price is going to be $699, take away $83.88. When I work that out, I end up paying in cash $615.12. And so this store, they offered a discount for any person that came in with cash and wanted to just pay for their tablet outright. But for some persons, that won't always be an option. Let's see what happens if I have to go the higher purchase plan route. They say to me that the higher purchase plan requires a deposit of $175, and so that's how much I must pay as a deposit, $175, if I have to use the higher purchase plan. And then followed by 6 monthly payments of $106.60. So they say calculate the total amount of monthly payments. Well, if I pay, I'm gonna add another text box down here. If I pay $106.60, $106.60 for a total of 6 months, my total monthly payments are going to be $639.60. So the next part of the question asks me to find the total higher purchase price. I know that higher purchase up to this point is going to be the deposit plus the monthly payments. So I can work that part out also. My deposit, and the question told me, was $175. So $175 plus my total monthly payments, which were $639.60. So in total, if I take the higher purchase route, I end up paying $814.60. we can automatically see if I look at the cash price, and this was my cash price, $6.15. I think I can underline it. My cash price was $6.15.12, whereas the higher purchase price was $8.14.60. I can automatically see that there's a good difference in the amount that I end up paying if I pay cash versus if I pay the higher purchase price. And so that's what the last question asked me. Calculate the amount that can be saved by paying cash. Well, I know the higher purchase price was more, so I'm going to start with that. $814.60. Take away the cash price. And I want you to pay attention, because when students look at this question, they might assume the cash price was $6.99, but that's not what the question said. Notice they said that the cash price came with a 12% discount. And so if I paid cash, I really ended up paying $6.15.12. And so my cash price was no longer $6.99. The cash price was in fact $6.15.12. And so if I take this route, I really end up paying $199.48. Right? So if you were able to complete this question, go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back. You did a good job. These are the type of questions that you can expect to see on the BGCSE exam when you do sit them. We have about 4 minutes. Well, we went over time. But if you do have any questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A section and I'll answer them quickly. But again, thank you so much to my panelists, Mrs. Brown Hall, Mr. Tinker. I also see I have a few other persons in there, Mr. Valentine, as well as my subject officer, Mrs. Mackey. Thank you so much for your input, everyone. For my attendees, next session, we're going to move on to wages and salaries. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to get started in another minute or so. I just want to give some more persons a chance to get into the room. Remember, for this lesson, you're going to need your calculator, writing utensils, some paper, of course. Alrighty, morning again. Let's go ahead and get started. So, objectives. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to solve BGCSE past paper questions involving wages and salaries. And so, like I said last session, today we're going to spend time looking at questions that would have come on past BGCSE papers. Because it's okay to say, all right, I know how to solve wages and salaries questions, but you also need to prove to yourself that you are comfortable and ready for the level of questioning that comes on the BGCSE. And I can guarantee you that almost every year, there's either a question on hire purchase or wages and salaries, or maybe even both. So you have to be comfortable working these questions. And so we're going to get right into our first question. What I'm going to do, I'll read the question, give you 5 minutes to work it, and then we'll do it together. So the first question says, a gardener works a basic week of 38 hours at a rate of $4.50 per hour. A, calculate the amount earned for a basic week. Then it goes on to say he worked 44 hours in 1 week. B, how many hours of overtime did he work? Overtime is paid at time and a half. Calculate I, the amount paid for 1 hour of overtime. I is total overtime pay. And then, part 1, part 2. So part 3 says his total earnings for a 44-hour week. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, which is plenty time to attempt the question. So last session, we talked about how to calculate the basic week. We went over the definitions as to what overtime is and what it means when we see time and a half. All of these bits of information are going to be very important to helping you in solving these questions today. I also want to encourage you to take your time, make sure you check over. You know, you don't want to make simple or silly mistakes that can end up causing you in the end. The point was brought out that usually your answer from A has an impact on your answer in B and then C. So be very careful in, you know, you're working and checking over. All right, so we have just over a minute. If you're done, go ahead and post all of your answers for this question in the Q&A section, because we're going to compare our answers. All right, so I'm checking the Q&A. So far, I see one response. I'll give you a little bit more time. Giving you a little bit more time because I want to see more responses to the question. So far, I have 2 persons that are responding. Gabriel, and I'm like our panelist said, I'm going to encourage you to just check over your calculations. Anonymous attendee. Tanya, I see posted her full response. Lenora also posted. So let's go ahead and go through the question. So again, to recap what it says, we're told that a gardener works a basic week of 38 hours at a rate of $4.50 per hour. Calculate the amount earned for a basic week. Well, we know we're going to take the hours and multiply by the rate. So that would be $38 multiplied by $4.50. And once I multiply that, my answer would have been $171. All right, moving on. It says that he worked 44 hours in 1 week. How many hours of overtime did he work? Well, if his basic week is 38 hours, anything additional or outside of that 38 hours must be considered overtime. So we're going to do 44 take away 38, which tells me that he worked 6 hours. At this point, I'm going to ask you to make or be very sure that you are putting in your units, because I don't want you to just write 6 hours or $171, so that you are sure and we're all sure as to what you're saying, especially when you get into that BGCSE exam. Overtime is paid at time and a half. Calculate, part 1, the amount paid for 1 hour of overtime. Well, we know time and a half means to multiply my regular rate by 1.5, which gives me $6.25. $6.75, sorry. Next, they say his overtime pay. Well, we know his overtime hours is 6 hours, and we know for each of those 6 hours, he's going to get paid $6.75. And so we combine the two by multiplying them. We find that for his overtime for those 6 hours worked, he made $40.50. And then the last part of the question asks me to find his total earnings for a 44-hour week. We know that for a 44-hour week, he worked 6 hours overtime and made $40.50. And then for those first 38 hours, he made $171. So his total is going to be $171 plus the $40.50 for overtime. That week in total, he made $211.50. So I'm just checking the Q&A section really quickly, and I see a good number of persons got it right. If you didn't, please use this time to address the mistakes, correct them. All right, but I do see 1 or 2 persons in the Q&A that got it correct. So go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back if you did. If not, just make your corrections quickly. Let me at this time also say that this lesson will be uploaded as soon as the lesson is done. I went on the virtual learning website this morning, and I do see the lesson from yesterday has already been uploaded. So at any point, if you need the lessons, just go back to them, and they have my PowerPoints with my answers as well as my talking points throughout the lesson. Alrighty, let's move on to our next question. And again, all of these questions come directly from the BGCSE exam. This question is about Tracy. So it says, Tracy works 6.5 hours per day from Monday to Wednesday and 8 hours per day on Thursday and Friday. She is paid $8.10 per hour. Calculate part 1, the number of hours worked per week. Part 2, her weekly earnings. Then they say she receives an increase in pay and her new weekly earnings are $301.75 for the same number of hours. B, calculate her new hourly rate. So this question includes or requires a bit more thinking, but I know that you can handle it. Another 5 minutes to attempt the question. So we know that from this question, we can see that Tracy works 6.5 hours for the first 3 days of the week. And then the next 2 days, she works 8 hours. So from that, we can calculate how many hours she worked for the full week. Then we know she is paid $8.10 per hour. So every hour she works, she's going to get paid $8.10. So I so far see 2 responses in the Q&A, 3 responses so far. And again, I'm going to encourage you to make sure you're checking your steps before you decide on a final answer. Last class, I gave you, some short formulas to use. I think it'll be very helpful to refer back to those formulas. I wouldn't even call them full formulas, but just suggestions or tips on how to work the questions. Refer back to them as needed. So I see more answers popping up. What I'm going to ask is that you submit all of your answers together. So like Gabriel, I see your answers, but you're putting them in separate questions. Can you just put them all together? So work the full question and then submit all of your answers. Thank you. You have just over a minute left. Just over 1 minute left. So I see Daniel Strawn put an answer. Daniel Strawn has an answer. Andronique Nash, also submitted a response. I like that you're checking and making the necessary corrections. Your time, you have about 30 seconds left, and we'll look at it together. Okay, I see a message from Deontay. So let's look at the response. I also see Sky's response. So let's look at the question together and check to see what you did. So again, Mrs. Tracy works 6.5 hours per day from Monday to Wednesday and 8 hours per day on Thursday and Friday. She is paid $8.10 per hour. Calculate the number of hours worked per week. Well, what we needed to know is how many hours she worked Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, which was 3 days. So I'm going to multiply 6.5 by 3. And then Thursday and Friday, she worked 8 hours. So we're going to multiply 8 by 2, since that was 2 days. Through my working, I get 19.5 plus 16. In total, she worked 35.5 hours. I saw some persons put 35.5 hours. That's okay. But with time, let's try to express it as fractions. But if you do the decimal, it's fine. Weekly earnings. So I'm going to take the number of hours she worked, which was 35.5, and multiply it by $8.10. And that tells me that in total, she made for that week $287.55. Continuing on with the question, they tell me that she receives an increase in her pay. And so now for that same number of hours, 35.5 hours, she's going to get paid $301.75. She got an increase, but she's working the same number of hours. So it's still 35.5 hours. Calculate her new hourly rates. What I'm going to do, $301.75 divided by 35.5. I find that in total, she made $8.50 as her new hourly rate, or $8.50 per hour. If you got it, give yourself a pat on the back. If not, use this time to make the corrections and the adjustments. Like I said, this session will be recorded and uploaded to the virtual learning system as soon as I'm done. So if you miss anything from today or even yesterday's lesson, please go back and review the PowerPoint along with the working. All right, another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll look at our third question for the day. Here's our third question. Tamara is paid $6.80 per hour for the first 40 hours worked in a week. Overtime is paid at time and a half. Calculate her earnings for a regular 40-hour week, 1 hour overtime, and a 46-hour week. Last week, she earned $292.40. Calculate the amount of hours she worked. So you have the same amount of time. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to work the problem. Remember, when you share your responses in the Q&A, please post all of your answers together. We have one response in the Q&A section so far. And again, to everyone, I see another response, but to everyone, I'm going to encourage you, make sure you're checking over your answers, especially when you sit in that BGCSE exam. I don't want you to just rush through and write an answer and then move on. Check your answer first. Make sure it's correct. Like I always tell my students, you don't want to lose 1 or 2 points because of a very small error or a very silly mistake, because that 1 or 2 points can be the difference between the D and the C grade, or even the C grade and the A grade or the B grade. So, take your time, be very careful, make sure you check over, especially when you're working with a question that's as straightforward as, wages and salaries. And with the time you have on the BGCSE, you have a good bit of time, so don't rush through. Take your time and check, especially when you finish the exam and you have maybe like 20 or 30 minutes left over. That's not free time. That's not time to just go to sleep or chill. That's your time to check over the paper. All right. So you have just over a minute left. So I'm giving persons more time to submit their answers in the Q&A section. Again, if you can, please put all of your answers. Don't just submit the answer for part A1. I want you to put all of your answers together. So far I see responses from Daniel, Andronique, Chardonnay. Samuel also put a response in the group, in the Q&A section. Tatiana, I see your response. So 40 seconds. So if you have your answer, you should be working to type them into the Q&A section. And then we're going to take a chance to compare. So I see 8 responses. Gabrielle posted a response. Franklin posted the rest of his response. Let's look at it together. And remember, this is just an opportunity to practice. So if you see something that you need to work on, use this as an opportunity to make improvements. All right, so let's move on. Question says, again, Tamara is paid $6.80 per hour for the first 40 hours worked in a week. Overtime is paid at time and a half. Calculate her earnings for part 1, a regular 40-hour week. We're going to do 40 times 680, $272. So if you got that, good job. If you didn't, make the corrections. Part 2, 1 hour overtime. That's going to be 680 times 1.5, which is $10.20. A 46-hour week. And I'll walk through it. Because she worked 6 hours overtime, she made a total of $61.20 for those 6 hours. When I add that to the amount of money she makes for the 40 hours, which was $272, her total is going to be right here. Here's the total amount of money she makes, $333.20. Part B says last week she earned $292.40. Calculate the amount of hours she worked. Well, let's think about what we know. We do know that for the first 40 hours she made $272. So what I know she worked at least 40 hours. I need to figure out how many hours of overtime did she work. So I start by subtracting the $272 to determine how much overtime pay she received. When I subtract, I get $20.40, which means that's how much money she made in overtime. If I divide that by 1020, I now know how many hours of overtime she worked. 2 hours. And I'm going to combine the two. I know she worked 40 hours regularly and she worked 2 hours overtime. So in total, she worked 42 hours. Please make the adjustment because I saw a number of persons got 43 hours. She in fact worked 42 hours. Alrighty, here's the next question. Again, we have another 5 minutes on the question. Alright, so for those persons that just joined, you're working on this question and we will work through it together. Again, as a reminder, work the full question and then post your answer to each section together in one response in the Q&A section. So far I see Daniel has an answer and then Andronique. Good stuff. I would like to challenge more persons to submit answers because I think we have, at this point, we have about 30 students in the group. But I think on average, maybe about 8 persons, 7 to 8 persons have been responding. So please share your answer. If you're shy, feel free to use the chat. It is private, but myself as well as the other panelists, we want to see how you're working through the problems to see if there's anything we need to address. Again, I'm going to walk through the steps again. Remember to find the wage. We just multiply the total hours worked by the rate per hour. And then to find the overtime pay for an hour, we're going to multiply the hourly pay times 1.5, and that's because they tell me time and a half. And then to find the total for 44 hours, well, I know I have to figure out how many hours Mr. Joy worked overtime. And once I find that, I can multiply by my overtime pay or my overtime rate for 1 hour. And then I can add that to the wage for a 38-hour week. So I see a good bit of responses popping up. I see Samuel, Lenico, LaShawn, Sky, Tanya, Gabriel, Shiloh, Tatiana, Brene. Okay. Franklin also posted an answer. So let's go ahead and work through the problem. Again, I'll read it. It says, Mr. Joy works a basic week of 38 hours at a rate of $3.40 per hour. Calculate his wage for the 38-hour week. Again, I'm going to multiply his basic week, or the number of hours he worked, times the rate, which tells me how much he gets paid per hour, which in this case is $3.40. Once I multiply the two in my calculator, and I'm always checking to make sure I got this right, it's going to be $129.20. Overtime is paid at time and a half. Calculate his overtime pay per hour. Well, they taught me that his rate per hour for a regular hour is $3.40. but they say for overtime it's going to be paid at time and a half, or 1.5. And so I'm going to multiply the two together. 340 times 1.5. 340 times 1.5, which when I multiply gives me $5.10 of overtime. For overtime, sorry, which means every hour that he works for overtime, he's going to get paid $5.10 per hour. Then they say calculate the amount Mr. Joy earns in a week when he works 44 hours. I need to first determine how many hours he worked. So I subtract 44, take away 38. That gives me 6 hours. I know that he's working 6 hours of overtime this week. To determine how much money he's going to get paid for those 6 hours, I multiply by $5.10, which gives me a total of $30.60. My total pay is going to be $129.20 plus $30.60, which is $159.80. Please make corrections and address whatever problems you might have had. And let me encourage you, this is our time to work on the questions, to address whatever problems we do have. So I really, really want to hear from everyone in the group. And even if you want to just speak privately in the chat, like I see one person did, feel free to. We're going to try our best to answer you. There are about 3 or 4 math teachers in the chat, and we're all trying our best to address whatever questions that you do have. All right, let's move on. I think we have time for one more question. All right, let's try this last question. Remember, if you speak to us in the chat, that's private, so everyone won't see the discussion that we have. If you feel as if you're still a little bit shy or nervous about working out the question, so you have 2 areas where you can post your responses. But I definitely want to hear from you, and I'm happy that I heard from a lot more persons in this last question. So again, you're working through the question. Based on the time, this may be the last question we get to go through, but I think I have another question in my PowerPoint. I'll put it up on the screen so that when you go through the live recording on the ministry's virtual learning website, you will still have access to that question. All right, so far I already got 2 responses in the group, but I see they're slightly different for C. So I'm going to encourage everyone, make sure you're checking over your answers before you submit a response. And this is a very crucial step with the BGCSE, because you don't want to lose 1 point over a concept or a skill that you know, and you just maybe made a mistake in writing your responses. So take your time to check. Always check to make sure that you calculate it properly, you put everything into your calculator correctly, and then you wrote them down on your paper properly. Just to check the time, let's see how much more time you have. I'm going to give you another minute or so. You have another minute and a half left. All right, I see my Q&A section lighten up. Let's see who all 10 responses. Wow. Daniel, Andronique, Chardonnay, Gabriel, and I hope I'm saying your name properly. Tatiana, Shiloh, I see Andronique addressed her response. She corrected it. Samuel, Sky, Lenico. These responses look so good, man. Tanya. All right. So you have about 20 seconds. You have about 20 seconds left. I also see a response from Deontay. All right, let's go ahead and read the question first. I'm gonna go ahead and read the question first. 1 second. Alrighty, so Tom Green works a basic week of 35 hours at a rate of $4.10 per hour. calculate his wage for the 35-hour week. And then they tell me overtime is paid at time and a half. Calculate his overtime paid for 1 hour. And then see the amount Mr. Green earns in a week when he works 46 hours. Let's see how we did. 35 times 410, which is 143.50. And I saw just about everyone that submitted a response got that correctly. Now let's look at part B. B speaks to his overtime. How much is he going to get paid for 1 hour of overtime? Well, 410 times 1.5, which is 615. And then here we want to know how much money he's going to make for 46 hours. Well, once we figure out how many hours that is of overtime, I can calculate his overtime pay and then add that into his total pay, which is $211.15. All right. So, if you didn't get any part of it, take your time and make the corrections. Let me also encourage you. Another thing that I see students sometimes do, they just put answers. You can't just put an answer. In working these problems, make sure you show your steps, because a lot of times these questions are 2-point questions, which means a part of your answer is going to be assessed. And so even if maybe you wrote the wrong number, like let's take, for example, for question A, let's say that question A was a 2-point question. And I'm going to put the 2 there. I'm going to change my pen. And let's say I did this first step properly, but my second step, I wrote 130. I could actually use the typing thing. Let's do that. So let's say for the second part of this answer, instead of writing 143, I wrote 134.50. Here's why it's important to show my steps. Because if it's a 2-point question, obviously the first point is for this step here. So instead of, losing everything, I could still get some points from my working being correct. And so I'm going to encourage you to not just write your answers, but be sure to show your working, because you want to get the maximum number of points for this exam. I'm going to remove that. All right, so just because I want to be mindful of time, I'm going to show the last question and then show the answer, so that when you're working on your own, if need be, you can go through and pause the video and look at the question. So I'm just posting this for those persons that are going to check it out at a later time. I'm not going to leave it up for long. Here's the last question, and here are the answers. So if you want to work through this question on your own, check out the live lesson or the recorded lesson once it's been posted and work through it. All right. Let me display the question again. But what I want to do, I want to come into the Q&A section and I want to hear from everyone. How do you feel in connection to wages and salaries if a question were to come on the BGCSE? That's first question. Second question, if there were any topics that you would like to perhaps review or think, would be good if we had a review session on, please post them now, because we want to, tailor these lessons as much as possible to the audience that we do have. So again, the 2 questions I asked: how do you feel about wages and salaries going into the BGCSE? And then, are there any topics that you might want help with moving forward? I see y'all posting in the chat. I'm happy that Tatiana says she feels good about wages and salaries. I see someone, she also said simple interest. So we could look at simple interest, because that question could be tricky, especially when we're talking about the time. Simultaneous equations with matrices, that's a Andronique Nash. Okay, so we're looking at some paper 3 concepts. Trigonometry is also important because that comes every year. Trigonometry is going to come. Speed, distance, and time. Then finding the gradient of a parabola. Trigonometry. And so I'm asking I'm going to try to make a note of this. Let me write, but my panelists are also making a note of what you're saying, because we want to try to make sure that you're prepared in the event we have our BGCSE this year. Giovanna, I'm happy that you're confident with wages and salaries. So just to recap what I see graphs of linear as well as quadratic equations. There's some trigonometry, simultaneous equations. Now, Andronique, I am going, as well as Tatiana, I see both of you address the same question. In terms of paper 3, I can't promise you that we will address a good number of paper 3 questions, just because we want to focus on the core, because every single student that sits the BGCSE will sit paper 1 and 2, whereas, a significantly smaller number of students will sit the paper 3. However, I'm going to see if we can find a way to get some work to you if possible. All right. So I have all of your responses, and I think my panelists would have taken note as well. Thank you so much for sharing with us. You asked, is there any way the ministry would be willing to allow a teacher to have these classes for extended instead of core? Well, I tell you what, a ministry official is in on this lesson. I'll forward your question over and we'll see. But I don't want you to think that it's just extended. You have to focus on the core as well. You have to be extremely strong in your core in order to pass the extended. And so I think you're still going to get a lot of benefit out of working on the core. I also see another respondee saying they need help with speed, distance, and time. All right, another point before I leave, because I'm going to end this session right now. Please take note that your Easter break does begin next week, Monday. Well, actually, today is the last day of classes. And so we will not have class next week because we will observe the Easter break. And then depending on what decision is made from our Prime Minister, we may be back together after the Easter break if you're not, or if we're not back in regular school. All right, so take care, everyone. Please be safe. Please practice social distancing. Please stay home if you don't need to be. All right, everyone, take care and enjoy your weekend.
Welcome again to A Gateway for a Better Life. Today we're going to be pausing for a few moments to look at the concept of the judgment and personal response styled essay. And so I want you to pay very careful attention to the information that you're going to see in this presentation, because you can use it at any level. You can use it at the PJC level, you can use it at the BGC level of examination for religious studies, and surely it's going to be helpful for you. So let's look and see what we're going to be talking about today. Mastering your argumentative and reasoning skills. And so let's have a look and see what that's all about. And again, even though JPRs are offered at both levels, this presentation is specifically geared toward those preparing for the BGCSE examination. So let's have a look and see what today's presentation is all about. Our objectives for today. I just want to say at this point, I'm grateful for Ms. Ruth Penniman. She's loaned me this presentation to be able to share it with you. And so that's why you see her standing there off to the right, I believe it is. But we're grateful for the use of this presentation and we thank her for her efforts. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to outline the steps for writing responses for judgment and personal response questions. You want to examine 4 ways to improve judgment and personal response writing skills. And we want to look now at what we see before us. Of course, whenever you have a question, you want to raise your hand, and in your case, not necessarily raise your hand, but maybe pause, maybe write it down and see if you can get some guidance from the nearest available teacher or helper. We want to talk about examination matters. So judgment and response assessment domain. So candidates should be able to recognize and understand the motives and influences which shape the attitudes and beliefs of others and himself or herself. And so one of the things I like to do, of course, you would see the paragraph before you, but we want to take some nuggets from the paragraph. And so the JPR response basically is asking you to present your views and the views of another. And so candidates are required to argue on the basis of evidence, issues of beliefs and practices arising from the study of religious and moral issues, and then do some formulating. You want to formulate a coherent response, personal response. Let's move on. We want to master JPR writing. We surely want to. And so let's move forward and see. In the BGCSE Religious Studies examination, candidates are required to write responses or answers for judgment and personal response questions. And so usually you would see a statement or a phrase, and they are going to ask you to respond. And I'll just, give one or two at this time. Uniform should be worn in all schools. Prayer is an important part of a believer's life. Those are just two of many examples of JPRs that you may see from time to time. And so let's see what the next bullet says. These questions are usually written in statement form, and candidates must give a stand, an opposing view, and a conclusion. Now, usually I like to drop a nugget here and a nugget there, and you may see it again, but for the benefit of this component of our presentation, I just want to give you a little bit more guidance. And so again, we talked about that statement. There is always going to be a statement or question that is given to you or posed to you, and you want to think about it from two perspectives, your personal viewpoint and the viewpoint of another. I may be going a little bit ahead of myself, but that's fine, because I think the emphasis is going to be so important to help you as you move forward. And so with that being said, let's talk a little bit about it again. Whenever we have a BGCSE JPR style question, the examiner will always provide you with a statement. And I gave two such examples already. Uniforms should be worn in all schools. Prayer is an important part of a believer's life. Or even miracles no longer take place. And so when you look at any one of those questions or statements, you now have to look at them carefully and begin to develop your own position, your own thoughts. You want to consider the thoughts or viewpoints of another. And of course, you want to generate a conclusion. What are your concluding thoughts about that phrase, that statement, that question, that position? And so let's see if we can look at something else. We are going to walk through a few that have been prepared. And I think I'm going to do one or two off the cuff, actually, just for emphasis to give you some support and guidance. What's next? In both papers 1 and 2, there are two sections. In section 1, there are 2 JPR questions, each with 7 points, and that's a total of 14. In section 2 of each paper, there are also 2 JPR questions, each with 10 points, a total of 20 points. And so we're doing some math now. Let's see what's next. In paper 3, a total of 20 points are allocated to JPR writing skills. And so we don't necessarily want to worry about the paper 3 in this case, because we are preparing more or less for the examination component, even though that paper 3 item is important as well. And so JPR points do matter. Before I say anything else, let's be guided by what we see before us. In section 1, there's the potential, pardon me, these tongue twisters. If you guys have been watching these presentations, sometimes they really, get in my way, but we will move forward nonetheless. And so what we have now is a total of 14 JPR points that you can obtain in section 1 only. And in section 2, you have the potential of gaining 20 points. And so 20 plus 14, I'm not a math teacher, but let's see if we can do something there. 20 and 14, 20 and 10 is 30. So that's approximately 34 points, if I'm correct. Again, I'm not a math teacher. However, you have the potential to gain all of those points once you would have prepared your JPRs properly. And you know, it's so easy to do. And you don't want to throw these points away. They're so easy to obtain once you get that formula right, how to write the JPR. We're going to talk about that now and shortly, but we just want you to be able to secure as many points as possible. And so if you do fall down in any way, in any small way, you have something to give you a little boost, of course, to cause you to do as well as you possibly can. And so the JPR points matter. Please don't leave them blank. Oh, yes, I was right. 34 points. Let's see what we have here. And then paper 2, 34 points. Now I need some help with this now. 34 and 34. Paper 3, possibly 20. And so that's a total of 88 points. And of course, you know it as you go in as it relates to coursework. And that's another component. And your coursework is presented even before the examination. And there is the potential to gain JPR points as well. And so you can garner approximately 88 points alone just from preparing your JPR as well. And it's so important for you to do that. Because as I said before, sometimes when you fall down in one of the responses that you have something to give you that boost to ensure you still do as well as you possibly can. And so candidates, you really want to just zoom in on how you can effectively prepare your JPRs so that you can secure as many JPR points as possible. I'll pause for a moment so that you can have a look at this slide again, and then we'll move forward. So time management now. You should spend no more than 10 minutes writing the responses for a 7-point JPR and 15 minutes preparing or writing a 10-point JPR. And so you realize that time is of the essence. Don't forget now the examination, the paper 1 is approximately 2 hours. The paper 2 is 2 hours. And so you really don't have an hour as you may have in other disciplines and other subjects and content areas to take maybe an hour, 45 minutes to write the essay component. For the JPR, you don't have that much time. And so you have to go in, you know, with a plan. There's so many ways that you can do it. And I will speak to the plan that you can possibly or potentially use to prepare your JPRs, because there's so many techniques that we teachers use across the islands and even throughout the region. There are different plans that you can use to prepare the JPR. It may be similar to your plans for English language or literature or any other area. It may be slightly different, but you want to have a plan. Of course, my grandmother always said, if you fail to plan, I think many of us know the rest of that. We plan to fail. And so you want to have a plan and you want to write your JPR response as effectively and as quickly and as neatly, of course, as possible. So please look at it again. For your 7-point JPRs, you want to spend 10 minutes. And so that means if you have 2 7-point JPRs in section 1, I think that's about 20 minutes of the examination already gone. If you have 2 10-point JPRs in section 2, that's 15 minutes apiece. So that's 15 and 15 is 30, and 30 plus 20 is 50. And so I think you're looking at approximately 50, I think that's 50 minutes. And if the examination is 2 hours, you have another 10 minutes and another 60 minutes. Now, I'm not going to venture down that path to do the math, but you want to spend maybe about an hour answering your JPR responses. And you may also want to spend another hour and a few moments answering your short answer questions. And of course, vocabulary will be included there, but we're looking at the JPR now. So please try not to spend much more than an hour answering all of the JPRs in total. In total, just an hour. Let's move forward with our presentation. So you want to brainstorm your stance or your position, whether or not you agree or you disagree. I want us to take a moment to look at it. And like I said, there's so many ways that you can actually get it done. So we're going to look at what we have before us, and then I'm going to pause to give 1 or 2 other thoughts as well to help you. So Let's say a person agrees with this brainstorming here. The stand is we agree. We were born in the image and likeness of God. He created both male and female. God loves all the same. Jesus died for the whole world. The Bible teaches us to love each other. We are brothers and sisters in Christ. And of course, the opposing disagree. Let's see. We are still different in the world. Skin color, ability, color, etc. And then we have man's greed has led to inequality. And then we have gender discrimination exists. And don't forget now, we're looking at the left versus the right side of our screen. Human rights are violated. And then we have the imperfect world causes us to treat others less than ourselves. And then we have in some churches, women are not allowed to serve. And in others, they are. And so, you think about these positions, you think about these statements, and you can agree or disagree based on the information that you would like to share, the knowledge that you have, the information that you're exposed to. Of course, much of what goes on in society today, you have so many ways to look at these positions, whether you agree or disagree. And of course, you are to provide always some support for your statements. So let's move forward. Again, I'm going to help you with one or two other tips and techniques, but for now, we're going to continue with the presentation. Can you master JPR writing skills? What are your average scores for 7-point and 10-point questions? If it's a 7-point question, would you normally get 3 or 4 or 5 generally? Or are you one of the high flyers? I believe many of our young persons are high flyers and they get the 6 or the 7. And of course, how many of you get the 10 or get the 7? We want to see, or the 6, we want to see how we can get you closer to the 7 and the 10, achieving all of those points, securing all of those points. Are you ready to look at JPR writing more carefully and ace your JPR component and all other components of that matter? Our step 1, we take a stand. What does that mean? You look at the question, the statement, the information provided, and you decide whether or not you are going to stand with it or stand against it. So let's see what we have next. So we have our statement before us. And what is our statement? All men are considered equal. Do you agree or disagree? And so whenever the examiner asks you to agree or disagree, you have to indicate which one you've sided with, which one you prefer. We've seen as educators over the years, persons say they agree and they disagree. And in many cases, that's fine. But we really want you to have a firm position, a firm stand. Do you agree or disagree? Are you leaning more to the left side or to the right side of this equation, this pendulum of sorts? Again, I'm not a math teacher. Please forgive these examples if they don't quite add up with what our math colleagues may say. And so do you agree or disagree? Do you agree or disagree? That's basically what we're asking. And so we look now. We want you to discuss your views fully and give an opposing view to show that you've thought about different points of view. So after you agree or disagree, you want to look at your views fully. Now, when we use that word there, that term fully, we want you not to list or to give bullet points of your ideas or your personal viewpoints. We want you to be in a position to develop the responses that you provide based on the stance or based on your position. And so that is very important. We cannot rush along with this component because it's so important to be aware that we want to fully develop our responses. And so with that being said, we really want to discourage you from bulleting or giving a quick list. I agree because, or I disagree because, and you move right into another person's point of view. We really want to pause to develop carefully, very carefully, each position, each point that we have. And of course, we want to look at the views of others. Let's look and see what we have before us now. You want to read the given statement carefully to make sure that you understand what is required. You want to highlight or underline the keywords of the statement or the question. It's so important to do that because you don't want to miss something or misinterpret something. We've seen that as well as examiners and as educators. You really don't want to rush along and think that you're giving the correct response, and then halfway through you say, oh, I didn't realize that they were asking it from that perspective. Or I misunderstood or misinterpreted the question. You really want to take your time and you want to highlight or underline the key words. What is the statement asking you to consider or the question asking you to consider? And are you answering based on what the expectations are? Or are you just doing your own thing? You really don't want to do your own thing because then you forfeit the points that you could have so easily obtained. Let's see what's next. So the majority of your points are allocated as it relates to your stand. It is heavily weighted or heavy weighted. And so the opposing view carries some value, the conclusion carries some value, but your stand, as we're saying now, carries the most value. So you want to be intentional about developing it correctly. Again, you don't want to list in a shorty way. I agree because others may think, in conclusion, that's definitely not the way to go. We don't, again, want you to write 5 pages of material of a response. However, we want you to be able to do it effectively. And we will get to that in a moment. And I still want to give you 1 or 2 other examination tips that you will see and hear about in a moment that may or may not be included in the balance of this presentation, but you will get them nonetheless. In a 7-point JPR, it is worth about 4 points, and in a 10-point JPR, it's worth about 6 points. And so I'll pause there too, because you want to appreciate that if it's a 7-point JPR, the majority of the points are awarded to the stand, which is 4. You can gain a total of 4 points for your stand for your 7-point JPR, and you can gain a total of 6 points for your stand as it relates to a 10-point JPR. And so that is heavily weighted, that component of the JPR, that is. You want to give your stand. For a 7-point JPR question, you will need 3 reasons for your stand, and for a 10-point JPR question, you want to give 4 reasons for your stand, or your position, or your stance. So with that being said, you really always want to ensure that you have taken careful attention and taking your time to develop your position. It's not something that you want to rush quickly along through. You want to think about what it is that you want to say. We always do a brainstorming exercise in the first 2 or so minutes for each of the JPRs that we want to prepare, and then we develop our responses. I'm waiting to see 1 or 2 other salient pieces of information in this presentation before I give you those examination tips and nuggets, but again, you will get them. I'm just reminding myself as I remind you that I want to provide them with you, for you, pardon me, toward the end of this presentation. Remember to support your reasons well with real life experiences, facts or information, and biblical stories and examples. And so when we talk about real life instances, we're talking about what Grammy might have experienced, or what Mama might have experienced, what Grandpa or Dad might have experienced, or what we ourselves may have experienced. And so you can back your position with a real life experience. I usually like to refer persons to news articles, the news, not necessarily social media, because sometimes when we look at social media, some of that may not be as accurate or as factual as we would like for it to be. And so any official news report, you want to draw a reference from that as well. And then of course, you definitely use your biblical stories, because each JPR can be backed by, I would say, at least 2 or 3. And don't forget, whatever the question prompts are, whatever the line of questioning is as it relates to the few short answer questions prior to answering the JPR, it will have a biblical story that you should automatically be able to use to support your statement, or to give you some support or some feedback to help you to prepare your JPR response. I think that's a better way to say it. I'll pause because all of that is so important, and I'll recap and then move forward. So we always want to use real life personal example stories. We want to use facts, we want to use news articles, and we want to use our biblical stories and examples to help us to prepare our JPRs. So let's look and see. In brainstorming your ideas, we want to choose a stand based upon the amount of reasons you gathered for agreement or disagreement. For example, if you formulate more reasons to agree rather than disagree, begin your stand by agreeing with the given statement. And so this is connected to exactly what I wanted to share, some of those examination tips and nuggets. So have a look at it carefully. So if you come across a JPR statement or phrase or question, and you agree more, there are more reasons why you agree than you disagree, then you go with agree. You take your position, you go with agree, and you lay out your responses based on the reasons why you agree. If the converse is true, you do the same thing. And so if you realize that you disagree more, or there are more points to support that you personally disagree, you want to go with that. So your position will be based on your disagreement. And not only that, you will give a very clear and full description or full statement as to why you disagree. And so I'll pause there. I know that that's a lot, but I know that you will get it as well. And so if you agree more, you will tell us why you agree more and lay it out very plainly, very carefully, and very clearly. If you disagree with the statement more, you will tell us why you disagree, and you will roll those points or those ideas very plainly and very carefully as well. For example, if you formulate more reasons to agree rather than disagree, begin your stand by agreeing with the given statement. Let's see what else is said. I agree that all men should be considered equal because God makes no difference between race, religion, or class. And so, of course, now that's just a statement. It's just your position. We have to do so much more because that's surely not 7 full points and that's surely not 10 full points. And so let's see what else we have before us. Begin your reasons by using transitional or linking words such as first, second, or third. Remember to indent your paragraphs to new ideas or thoughts. And in using real-life stories, remember to use the ideas that support the reasons. Use an anecdote or short story rather than wasting time writing a longer story, because you want to make sure that you secure your 3 to 4 strong points as it relates to your position, your stance. And so really and truthfully speaking, you want to be careful not to recall one lengthy story as opposed to giving many shorter stories so that you can get the points. Because one long story is not going to award you the points that you need. 3 to 4 ideas with support is going to do a better job at that. And so really keep that in mind. When you think about the real life story, in various denominations, such as Baptists and Anglicans and Assemblies of God, there's no discrimination in leadership positions. Both men and women are chosen as pastors or spiritual leaders. We're going to move along a little bit more quickly, but I want to share some other important information with you as well. And so when using a biblical story, indicate the part of the story that supports the statement. Remember, a JPR statement is constructed based on the story or topic that is tested, and there must be a part of the story or topic that agrees or disagrees with the given statement. So let's see what we have before us. The biblical example. In Acts chapter 10, a Jew by the name of Peter was used by God to bring a message of equality to a Roman centurion named Cornelius and a group of Gentiles. The message spoke about how God treats all men on the same basis. As a result, and I'll paraphrase this segment, the believers received the message, received the Holy Ghost, and were baptized. And so that biblical example supports that all men are created equally. And of course, I'll go a little further because it's always good to support our candidates and students. I'll go a little further by saying the meaning of that vision, and I won't say too much about the vision. I don't want us to go off course, but the meaning of that vision or Some persons interpret or believe the meaning of Peter's vision that he had with the white sheet descending from heaven with those unclean animals, reptiles, and wild birds. God was basically saying, and Peter understood in the form of divine revelation, that all men are born equal. All men are considered equal in God's eyes. God loves all men equally. And of course, God does not discriminate. And so that even adds a little bit more substance to your response. Let's see what we have next. A special note to you all. Make sure that your paragraphs are well organized. If you begin your essay by agreeing with the given statement or your stance or position or your stand, discuss all of the reasons why you agree, followed by the reasons you disagree or oppose the statement or the issue. You really want to do that. We've seen, in years past, persons, as we look at examinations at the school level, persons agree and then they disagree, and then they agree and then they disagree. And there's not a problem per se, but we just want you to be as organized as possible. And so give all of the reasons why you agree or disagree, or all of the reasons why you support your position, and then give all of the reasons why someone may oppose your position, and then of course give your conclusion, just so that you can have it to be a little bit more uniformed. And that's generally how we answer our JPR essays for, or responses for religious studies in particular. Please give all of the reasons why you agree or disagree, or give all of your points as it relates to your position up front, and then give all of your opposing viewpoints all together, and then you can provide a conclusion for us, please. Do not go back to your stand once you've given your opposing view. Organization is important. We've talked about that. So we're looking at the step 2, the opposing view. We want to talk about the opposing view just for a moment. In your opposing view, indicate why others might differ or disagree. For the 7-point JPR question, you are required to give a reason why others may differ with your stand. Much is required, or much more is required for the 10-point JPR. You're expected to give at least 2 reasons why others may differ with your stand or with your personal viewpoint. Have a look at it. I'll pause. And so again, remember we're talking about this formula. We're talking about this formula. I'm going to say 1 or 2 things at the very end, just to give more clarity and more support, because I know it's a lot, but the good thing is that you can look at this presentation again and again until you're comfortable with what you need to know. These reasons must be supported, of course, by real-life examples and other stories. One of the things that you will see, and I was thinking about what I really wanted to say about the picture that you see on your screen, but in life, we will always disagree. I don't think there's any family, any organization, any operation or organization, as I said already, or any business where disagreement does not take place from time to time. And it's fine. I think it's healthy and we're able to see others' viewpoints. And as I might have said in another presentation, it is important to remember that we may not accept someone's opinion, but we should respect that person's opinion. And I think that's very important to say. So you may not believe the way that they believe or how they believe, but that person still deserves a level of respect. They still deserve respect. You may not accept, but you should respect. I think that's a good way to say it. So remember, these reasons must be supported, by an explanation, whether it is a real life example or a biblical example or story. And you want to begin your opposing view with a nice transitional phrase. On the other hand, or other people may think, or others may say, or others may believe, or others may feel, and you want to think along those lines. On the other hand, all men are not considered equal because in the workforce, employees are treated differently. For example, police officers are placed in various ranks and are given special privileges than other officers. And then we have another point here. They are superior and there are, pardon me, I think, yes, there are superior and junior officers. And the junior officers are required to salute senior officers. And so there were just 2 or 3 examples in that former slide. Let's talk about the conclusion. The conclusion sums up your overall viewpoint of the given statement. It simply reminds you and your examiner of your stand. Begin your statement by using a linking or transitional word or phrase such as in conclusion. I prefer in conclusion. I think that's simpler. I think it's to the point. And I know some people like to say in summary, conclusively, or to wrap it all up, and that's fine. But in conclusion, I think is so clean, so simple, so neat, and you can move right on into your closing statements. So you want to write a conclusion. Conclusively, or in conclusion, or to sum it all up, or to wrap it all up, I agree that all men are considered equal because we are all created in the image and likeness of God. And so what would you do as it relates to this practice question? God has the power to do anything. Do you agree or disagree? Discuss your views fully and give an opposing view to show that you thought about different points of view. So what do we have? Oh, that's a 10-point. So let's go back to our memory bank. The 10-point JPR, I think there are 6 points for our position or our stance. I think there are 3 points for a well-developed opposing view. And I think that there's 1 point for your conclusion. I also believe that you should have, that candidates should have at least 4 very, very strong reasons with support as to why they took the position that they took. I think that candidates should have at least 2 to 3 reasons why others may disagree. And I think that there should always be a very clear conclusion. And so that kind of sort of, in a Bahamian way, that guides our response. That guides our response. So for those who may agree, the first reason is because of people's faith in God, they are rewarded with miracles. Today, these stories are shared through testimonies and sermons. The biblical story. Jesus's ministry, during Jesus's ministry, he performed many miracles. The blind was able to see again, the deaf were able to hear again, and the lame were able to walk. And of course, now we have our real life story. God uses people and organizations to make provisions for those who are hungry and homeless. And so we have those examples there. One of the things that I want to say, candidates, is this, and I'll pause. I know that sometimes I go a little bit beyond myself or a little bit faster than I should, but I want to pause. And so what you see before you is just an example. We really want you to be intentional about taking your time to develop your responses even a little bit more than we would have done so in this example and in this presentation. And so there's nothing wrong with referencing a specific biblical story where we talk about the blind being able to receive their sight, or the deaf being able to hear, or the lame being able to walk, or even the power of God at work in another way. Maybe an exorcism miracle, or maybe a resurrection miracle, or maybe something else that Jesus was able to do. Maybe one of the nature miracles, the feeding of the 5,000. And so as best as you can and as much as you can, you really want to give as much meat to the bones. I think that's a phrase that some of my colleagues use. You want to add as much substance as you can to your response without giving us a whole long 5-page document for the essay component, even though we're looking for your quality. This is another thing that I want to say, and please forgive me if it seems as if I'm going all around, but we are looking for quality above quantity. I think that's important to say, and that's the reason why we would have tried to lay out for you what our expectations are as it relates to responding. And so a person may have a 1-page response, and that's full 10 points. And a person may have a 4-page response, and that's only 5 points because they might not have followed the formula or the guidelines that we are providing. And so basically, I'm just trying to remind you to make your response as full as possible, and of course, move into your next component. And so let's move forward. What do we have next? And so for those who disagree, if God has the power to do anything, why are there so many social ills or social problems or issues in our world today? And of course, we have the real life example. Many people are addicted to drugs. And of course, again, candidate students, you want to develop these points. Give an example of a news article that you may have seen, or maybe a community where, you know, persons are struggling with that addiction. And of course, you want to speak to that as well. And of course, you never want to call names and attack individuals. We always attempt to attack, issues and not individuals. We want to attack in issues and not individuals. Because if we attack the individual, that may bring despair. But when we attack the issue, we try to guide them to a better life. Of course, our second bullet here is murder and other crimes are on the increase, on the rise. And of course, we also have, if God has the power or had the power to do all things, there would not be so many people who are dying from the coronavirus and other diseases. And so this is how a person who opposes the original position may be thinking or feeling, or how, you know, they're processing what we're looking at the moment. Again, you want to take the time to develop. So we have provided bullet points, but you want to really take the time to talk about an example, an experience. Again, there's so many things that have been happening in our culture and society and other cultures and societies around the world. And so again, you don't want to call names, you don't want to offend others, but you want to just highlight some of these social ills and other things that are going on, you know, from a general viewpoint, general position. And so we've come to the end of our presentation. I just want to share some very important things before we wrap it all up. Of course, in improving your JPR writing skills, you can improve your examination scores by 1 letter grade possibly. Are you ready to master the skill? Of course, we want you to be excited, and we know that we are going to do well. We know candidates that you're going to do well. So just before we conclude our presentation today, I want to say this at the moment. We want to recognize that there are some tips and some keys that you can use. I want to remind you of them. Whenever you write a JPR or are preparing to write a JPR, there are 2 strategies I encourage candidates to use. I want you to take about 2 minutes, as we said earlier on in our presentation. We want to take approximately 2 minutes. On the left-hand side, you may want to write the word disagree. On the right-hand side, you want to write the word agree. And you want to very quickly list reasons why you may agree with the position or the statement, why you want to agree with the statement. And then on the other side, you want to write reasons why you disagree. So let me repeat that again. On the left, you may want to write the word disagree, and you want to put the reasons why you disagree on that side, and on the right, you want to write why you agree. And for whichever side, as we said earlier on in the presentation, that has the more points or the greater amount of points or ideas that you would have penned, that's the side that you go with, because you always want to have more points to be able to develop for your position. Of course, we remember that the position takes the majority of the points as it relates to JPRs. And of course, your opposing view will be the other side or the other part that has the lesser points. And so if you're preparing to write a JPR and you realize, oh, I have 4 points as to why I disagree and 2 points as to why I agree, of course, you're going to go with the reasons why you disagree, develop them fully, of course, and then you're going to go why you disagree. I hope that's clear for us, because I know it's a lot, but I want to pause there because I don't want to confuse you. I want you to have 2 columns. On the one side, I want you to say why you agree. On the other side, I want you to say why you disagree, and you always go with the more whenever it comes to preparing your response, your position. And then, of course, you will have your opposing view and your conclusion. There's another way that some persons like to do it. Some persons like to do a very quick graphic organizer. And so the graphic organizer will have a number of arms attached to it. And so, of course, in the graphic organizer, at the central feature is whether or not you agree or disagree. And then your supporting arms or your supporting branches give reasons with support. So you would give one reason and support for that reason, another reason and support for that reason, a third reason and support for that reason. And then another branch actually takes us into the opposing view, how others feel, how others are thinking. And of course, you look at that branch and then you give some support for that branch as well. And then of course, you give your conclusion. And we always want you to be guided by general essay writing techniques. Always remember your introduction. Always remember your conclusion. Always remember to develop your body paragraphs. Always remember your transitional words and phrases as well. Those components are so important. And that, of course, as we said, can change your letter grade by 1 letter grade. So if these JPRs are mastered, if they're done well, you can actually move yourself from the B to the A, from the C to the B. And we are believing that all of you, most of you, we are hoping all, but most of you are going to do fantastically well in this examination cycle and in all of the other examination cycles that are to come. And so we just want to say thank you for joining us, a gateway to a better life. We wish you well. A+ or nothing. Do very, very well.